In a world where the known often collides with the unknown, there are tales that defy logic, moments that challenge our understanding of reality. From shadowy figures at the edge of the woods to encounters with beings that resemble us yet remain distinctly alien, humanoid encounters have intrigued and startled witnesses for generations. Today, we're diving deep into these eerie tales, unraveling stories that might make you question what truly lurks among us. A humanoid is basically anything that kind of looks like a human. It has 2 legs, 2 arms, maybe a head. It has the same basic shape of a human, but it isn't a human. For example, aliens or other kinds of cryptids. And today, I'm covering an iceberg about these humanoid encounters. So we're gonna go down this chart, and every single entry is a different story of an encounter with one of these humanoids. The ones at the top of this chart are very more well known. Like one of the first ones is Bigfoot, but then as we get lower and lower into it, it's gonna get more and more obscure and less commonly known. So I'm pretty excited. Let's get straight into this. Also guys, really quick before we get into this, I want to say that I'm getting almost all my information from cryptids.fandom.com and obscurinlegend.fandom.com, unless otherwise stated, but I'm getting most of my information from those 2 websites. Greys are the most common depiction of aliens that most people think of. They're the most common type of alien when it comes to sightings too. Greys are usually depicted as gray-skinned little humanoid freaks that have smaller, reduced, or are just completely without a lot of human parts, like noses, ears, or, what we have down there. Their bodies are usually seen as being elongated and stretched almost, with a small chest and without muscular or skeletal definition. Also, they have huge heads, and when drawn, they almost always are drawn with large, opaque, black eyes. It was 1965 when these aliens became well known and they became the popular depictions of aliens. This is because 1965 is when the Betty and Barney Hill abduction became public. I don't think most people know their names, but you probably will know this story. Basically, Betty and Barney Hill claimed that they were abducted by aliens, and when they returned, they described these aliens as the Greys. This story went famous, and that's why this depiction is so widespread now. The UFO sighting happened at 10:30 September 19th, 1961. The Hills were driving back to Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls in Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty claimed to have seen a bright light in the north sky that moved from below the moon quickly up the moon. Betty at first thought it was just a falling star, but then she realized that it can't be because it fell upward. She asked Barney to stop the car for a closer look, and also because they needed to walk the dog. Looking through the binoculars, Betty observed a quote, odd-shaped thing in the sky, flashing multicolored lights, move once again across the moon. Then Barney looked through the binoculars and told Betty it must just be a commercial airliner. But then when he kept looking more, he changed his mind when he saw the thing in the sky turn dramatically without turning, There wasn't much they could do though, so Barney and Betty just kept driving. On the drive though, they kept watching the ship in the sky to see what it would do. Eventually, Betty saw it start to rotate and start bouncing up and down. Then as they kept driving, eventually the aliens must have realized they were being watched because they rapidly descended down the sky toward Betty and Barney's car, to which Betty and Barney stopped the car when the object became 80 feet above them, and it fell to the entire view from the windshield of their car. Barney said he saw 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seeming to look at him. The aliens somehow communicated with them, and Barney doesn't know how. All he knows is that they told him to stay there and keep looking, but they didn't walk or talk or anything, some kind of telepathy going on. When they eventually got home, the Hills stated they had some odd sensations and impulses they couldn't explain. Betty insisted that they keep their luggage near the back door for some reason, and both of their watches quit working, and Barney said that the leather straps in his binoculars were broken, but he couldn't remember them ever breaking. Barney even stated he felt compelled by some force or something to examine his, what we got down there. Basically, their memories seemed to have been wiped or something because they couldn't remember anything between seeing the craft and getting home. I guess we'll never know what happened that night. Hey, if you're still here, you probably like me at least a little bit, so go down and follow my Instagram. I'll be posting updates on new videos and my life, etc. Go give me a follow, and yeah, back into the video. Bigfoot, also commonly known as Sasquatch, is a legendary creature often described as a large, hairy humanoid. Reports and legends about Bigfoot span numerous cultures, with sightings and folklore primarily centered in North America, particularly the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot is typically described as standing between 6 to 9 feet tall, and is often depicted as having a large frame, being muscular and covered in dark brown or reddish hair. The face is usually described as human-like, but with a pronounced brow ridge, a flat nose, and deep-set eyes. One of the most iconic pieces of evidence are the large footprints associated with the creature, some measuring up to 24 inches long. Before European settlement in America, indigenous tribes across North America had legends of large, hairy, man-like creatures. Names and descriptions vary, but there are clear parallels. So basically, Bigfoot has been around for a while, just not always known as Bigfoot. Starting in the 20th century, particularly in the 1950s and 60s, reports of Bigfoot sightings became more frequent, with individuals claiming to have seen the creature or found its footprints. Some notable examples and encounters include the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967. Probably the most famous piece of evidence, this short film depicts a purported Bigfoot walking across a clearing. While some consider it the best evidence of Bigfoot's existence, others believe it to be a hoax. We also have the Ape Canyon incident in 1924. Miners in Washington State claim they were attacked by a group of ape-like creatures, which is one of the earlier modern encounters. But yeah, I mean, everybody knows Bigfoot. I don't want to spend too much time here. Let's get into the cooler stuff. I'm gonna go get some tea, bro. Ashtar Sheran is a name that comes up in various New Age and UFO-related circles. He's often referred to as a humanoid extraterrestrial or a space commander, and here's a brief overview. The character of Ashtar Sheran began to appear in the mid-20th century among those who claim to be in telepathic contact with extraterrestrial beings. These individuals, often referred to as contactees, reported messages from Ashtar about peace, spiritual development, and warnings about nuclear weapons. Ashtar is often described as a benevolent being from a higher spiritual plane, here to guide humanity towards enlightenment and peace. He is commonly associated with the Ashtar Galactic Command, a supposed extraterrestrial fleet of spaceships that orbit Earth. This command is sometimes described as being here to protect humanity from other malevolent extraterrestrial threats or to oversee our spiritual development. Ashtar Sheran has been embraced by various New Age groups and those interested in UFO phenomena. Some believe in the messages purportedly from Ashtar as guidance for spiritual evolution and as a warning about potential global crises. Mainstream scientists and skeptics generally view the Ashtar Sheran narrative as part of just, a UFO mythology or a fabrication, which makes complete sense. Ashtar Sheran, unlike things such as Bigfoot or UFOs, is not typically associated with physical sightings. He's usually encountered spiritually, so there's no real actual encounter stories I can tell. The Goatman is a cryptid, a creature of folklore and urban legends primarily reported in the eastern United States. It is described as a humanoid with the lower features of a goat, such as hooves or sometimes horns, and the upper body of a human. Originating in the 1950s and 1960s, the legend of the Goatman has several variations, but a common theme is the creature roaming the backwoods, bridges, or tunnels, often linked with mysterious disappearances or eerie screams in the night. Maryland is one of the most well-known locations for Goatman stories, particularly the area around the Bettsville Agricultural Research Center. Some versions of this tale suggest that Goatman is the result of a scientific experiment gone wrong at that research center. Another hotspot for Goatman tales is the state of Texas, where the creature is sometimes associated with old bridges or railways. One of the most infamous Goatman sightings is associated with Fletchertown Road in Bowie, Maryland. According to local tale, it was here that a young couple encountered the creature in the late 1950s or early 1960s. As the story goes, the couple had parked their car on a secluded part of the road. While they were chatting, they heard a noise and saw a large humanoid creature moving in the vicinity. Initially dismissing it as possibly a deer or another animal, they were horrified when they saw it more closely, identifying it as a creature with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a goat. The Goatman allegedly banged on their car with a large axe, frightening them further. They managed to escape unharmed, but the encounter left them traumatized. In the following days, the story spread, with more people coming forward about their own encounters. Reports of animals being mutilated or killed and attributed to the Goatman also began to emerge. While the Fletchertown Road sighting may have been embellished over the years, it remains a cornerstone of this Goatman legend. Okay guys, I promise we're gonna get to the more interesting ones later. These are just the popular ones that most people already know. But just bear with me, because if I didn't cover these, and there'd be somebody in the comments getting all pissed that I didn't cover the whole iceberg, oh my god, where's Yeti? Anyways, the Yeti, often referred to as the Abominable Snowman, is a legendary cryptid said to inhabit the Himalayan mountains. It is one of the most renowned creatures in the world of folklore and has deep roots in the legends and spiritual beliefs of the local indigenous communities. The Yeti is typically described as a large creature on two legs, covered in thick fur that allows it to survive in the frigid mountain climate. Its appearance varies in accounts, but it is generally depicted as having both ape-like and bear-like characteristics. characteristics. The creature is believed to be nocturnal, elusive, and quite shy, avoiding human contact. For centuries, local Tibetan and Nepali cultures have had their own names and tales about this creature. It's often viewed as a guardian of the mountains or as a symbol of the dangers and mysteries that the Himalayas hold. These traditional stories, however, are deeply spiritual and differ significantly from the modern, sensationalized version of the Yeti. One of the most popular Yeti sightings involves British mountaineer Eric Shipton. In 1951, during an expedition to Mount Everest, Shipton photographed a set of mysterious footprints in the snow. The prints, which appeared to be large, with 2 legs, and humanoid, captured global attention. Shipton's photos played a significant role in popularizing the Yeti legend in the Western world. Subsequent mountaineering expeditions often reported similar footprints or fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures in the distance. These accounts fueled intrigue and led to numerous Yeti-focused expeditions in the latter half of the 20th century. But despite all of this, there is still no actual concrete evidence that this Yeti exists. So, it's cool, but The Mothman is a cryptid that became famous due to sightings in the Point Pleasure area of West Virginia during the mid-1960s. It's one of the more eerie and mysterious figures in American urban legends, often associated with, foreboding events. The Mothman is said to stand at about 7 feet tall, with a wingspan of 10 to 15 feet. Its most distinguishing features are its large, glowing red eyes. It's often portrayed as a creature with the ability to fly at great speeds, sometimes even pursuing cars leaving the area. The first significant sighting took place on November 15th, 1966. Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with another couple, were driving near an area outside of Point Pleasant known as the TNT area, a former World War II munitions site. They claimed to see a large winged creature with glowing red eyes. Terrified, they drove at high speeds to escape, but the creature reportedly pursued them before eventually disappearing. Upon reaching the Point Pleasant Police Department, they reported their encounter, describing the creature in detail. This initial sighting was the catalyst for a series of Mothman reports in and around Point Pleasant. Over the next year, numerous individuals came forward with their own encounters describing a similar creature. This caused a wave of panic and curiosity in the town. However, the Mothman legend took a darker turn on December 15th, 1967, when the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio tragically collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. Now, there is no real actual connection between the Mothman sightings and the bridge collapse, but the local lore around the area and later retellings of the story linked the two events. The Mothman became seen by some as a harbinger of doom, having appeared to warn of the impending disaster. The Mothman's popularity was further cemented by John Keel's 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, which detailed the events in Point Pleasant and proposed paranormal explanations. The book later inspired a 2002 film of the same name. The Flatwoods Monster, sometimes referred to as the Braxton County Monster or the Phantom of Flatwoods, is a cryptid that was reported to have been seen in the town of Flatwoods in Braxton County, West Virginia in the early 1950s. This mysterious creature is among the lesser-known cryptids, but remains a significant part of West Virginia's folklore. On the evening of September 12, 1952, a group of children, accompanied by a few adults, went to investigate what they thought was a crashed UFO on a hill in Flatwoods. Their investigation was prompted by the sighting of a bright object streaking across the sky and landing on that hill. When they reached the site, they claimed to have encountered a bizarre creature. According to the witnesses, the creature was about 10 feet tall with a spade or ace-shaped hood or cowl. Its eyes glowed a bright green, and its body seemed to give off a reddish hue. The creature had a metallic or machine-like appearance, with some reports describing it as having short, stubby arms ending in claw-like fingers. The witnesses also reported a pungent mist at the site that caused irritation to their noses and throats. Upon seeing the entity, the group fled in panic. Once they reached safety, they promptly reported the incident to local authorities, who, alongside a local newspaper reporter, went to the site to investigate. While the creature was no longer there, they reported a lingering pungent odor. The sighting of the Flatwoods Monster caused a local media sensation and drew the interest of UFO and cryptid enthusiasts. There were other reports of similar creatures in the area in the days that followed as well. The Loveland Frogman, sometimes simply referred to as the Loveland Frog, is a cryptid reported to inhabit the areas around Loveland, Ohio. The creature has been a part of local folklore since the 1950s and is among the more unusual cryptids given its amphibious characteristics. The first reported sighting of the Loveland Frogman took place in May 1955. A businessman was driving along an unnamed road late at night when he claimed to have seen 3 frog-like creatures congregating by the side of the road. According to his account, these beings were around 3 to 4 feet tall, stood upright on their hind legs, and had leathery skin. The creature's more striking feature was their distinctly frog-like heads, which gave them their name. Startlingly, one of the creatures was said to have waved a hand or bar above its head, releasing sparks. Following this initial encounter, again in 1955, there wasn't significant attention to the frogman until March 1972, when 2 separate police officers reported encounters on 2 different nights. The first officer reported seeing an unidentified animal with a similar description along the road before it leaped over the guardrail into the river below. The second officer, a few nights later, claimed to have seen a large upright creature that resembled a frog or a lizard. Both officers were familiar with local wildlife, making their reports all the more puzzling. Yeah, this one could be real, guys. I don't know, this one's kind of scary. Slenderman is a modern urban legend that originated from internet culture in the early 2010s. Unlike many cryptids or folkloric beings with deep historical or cultural roots, Slenderman's origin can be traced back quite specifically to a forum post. Slenderman was created in 2009 on the Something Awful forums as part of a Photoshop contest. Users were encouraged to edit everyday photographs to appear paranormal. A user named Eric Knudsen, also known by the pseudonym Victor Surge, posted 2 black and white photos of groups of children with a tall, shadowy figure lurking in the background. He also added fabricated library descriptions to lend an air of authenticity to the photos. This figure, later known as Slenderman, was characterized by its tall, thin frame, featureless face, and tentacle-like appendages protruding from its back. Over time, the Slenderman mythos evolved and expanded. Online communities, particularly on platforms like Creepypasta, began crafting elaborate stories and first-person accounts of encounters with this mysterious entity. Slenderman is often depicted as stalking, abducting, or traumatizing children, and has the ability to teleport and influence people's actions. Character is also sometimes associated with forests or abandoned locations. If you guys want to learn more about the history and origins of Slenderman, I have a whole video on it right here. It looks like this. Go check it out. Anyways, moving on with Slenderman. The Slenderman myth grew in popularity, inspiring art, stories, videos, and even games. However, the legend took a dark turn in 2014 when 2 12-year-old girls in Wisconsin attempted to murder a classmate, claiming they wanted to appease Slenderman and prove his existence, which definitely brought this whole scary mythos a kind of a bad name online. Reptilians are humanoid type creatures that have scaly skin, vertical slit eyes, and sometimes a somewhat human physique mixed with characteristics of a lizard or a snake. Theories about reptilians vary widely in details. Some purport that these have been on Earth for a very long time, suggesting that they have influenced or even controlled human civilization from its early days. There are ancient myths and legends from cultures around the world that would tell of a serpent or dragon-like kind of thing, some of which were, revered or feared. These ancient stories are sometimes pointed to as evidence or precursors of the modern reptilian narrative. In modern times, the idea of reptilian humanoids has been popularized by figures in the conspiracy theory community, most notably David Icke. He proposes that reptilian extraterrestrials have been interbreeding with humans for centuries, creating hybrid lineages that have maintained control over significant portions of the human population. According to these theories, many world leaders, celebrities, and influential figures are either reptilian entities or under their control. Now, while these theories have literally zero evidence, people still believe them. So, do you, bro, I guess. Skinwalkers, rooted deeply in the folklore of the Navajo and some other Native American tribes, are believed to be witches or shamans who have the power to transform into animals or mimic human beings. In the context of humanoid encounters, a skinwalker might be described as a shape-shifting entity, capable of appearing human or taking on the form of various animals, most commonly coyotes, wolves, bears, or birds. The central concept behind a skinwalker is the ability to wear wear the skins of different creatures to gain their attributes or to achieve certain goals. The lore says that skinwalkers are humans that chose this dark path willingly, often driven by personal gain or the intent to harm others. By performing forbidden rituals, these individuals are said to tap into malevolent powers, allowing them to curse, spy on, or harm their victims. In their human form, skinwalkers might appear just like any other person, making them especially dangerous as they can blend seamlessly into communities. However, many accounts of these suggest that they may have unnatural features like glowing eyes or something. Now, a specific account of one of these comes from the southwest US, where a motorist recalls driving along a desolate stretch of a highway at night. As they drove, a large wolf-like creature reportedly ran alongside their vehicle, matching its speed even as the driver accelerated to over 60 miles an hour. To the motorist's horror, the creature's eyes glowed an unnatural shade, and as it turned to look at them, its face apparently appeared disturbingly human, and then it just ran away. Yeah, skinwalkers are definitely something. I don't know, man. Don't go in the forest tonight, bro. Alright, we are finally done with layer 1. Let's get into the good stuff now. I'm actually excited for the good stuff now. The interesting stuff that people haven't heard of. So yeah, let's get straight into this. Indrid Cold, often referred to as the Grinning Man, is a figure of modern American folklore, primarily associated with UFO sightings and encounters. His first reported appearance dates back to the 1960s, during a period when UFO sightings were garnering significant media attention. The most famous account comes from a man named Woodrow Derenberger. In November 1966, in Parkersburg, West Virginia, Derenberger claimed to have been driving home when he was flagged down by a mysterious vehicle. The driver introduced himself as Indrid Cold. According to Derenberger, Cold had an unsettling perpetual grin and communicated with him not through speech, but through a form of telepathy. Cold reportedly conveyed that he meant no harm and was merely gathering information. After their brief interaction, Cold returned to his vehicle, which Derenberger described as looking like an unconventional aircraft rather than a car, and flew away. This encounter set off a series of sightings and reports of the Grinning Man across the state. Those who claimed to have come in contact with him described a similar experience, a man with a wide, eerie grin who communicated through thought rather than speech. Indrid Cold's legend expanded after Derenberger's account was publicized. John Keel, a journalist and UFOologist, wrote about the Grinning Man in his book, The Mothman Prophecies, which we already talked about a little bit. But anyways, that book really helped solidify this idea of Indrid Cold being a real thing. This one's kind of creepy. Like, imagine you're just like driving down the road late at night after like a game or something, you know, it's like maybe like 1 a.m., nobody else on the road, and then you just get flagged down by this like grinning dude, like bruh. Baba Yaga is a famed and feared figure in Slavic folklore, often depicted as a witch-like old woman who lives deep in the forest in a hut perched atop chicken legs. Her character switches between that of a malevolent force and a wise, albeit challenging, source of guidance, making her a complex and multifaceted figure in many traditional tales. One of the most distinctive aspects of Baba Yaga is her mode of transport. Instead of the typical broom associated with witches, Baba Yaga is said to travel in a mortar, pushing herself with a pestle and using the pestle to erase her tracks behind her. Her hut, apart from its peculiar chicken legs, is often described as being surrounded by a fence made of human bones. Though Baba Yaga is often portrayed as a villain, her role in Slavic tales is more nuanced. In many stories, protagonists seek her out or encounter her while on a quest. She might pose challenges or riddles to these characters, and while she can be a threat, she can also offer crucial assistance. For example, in a popular Russian fairy tale, a girl named Vasilia is sent by her wicked stepmother to fetch light from Baba Yaga's hut. Although faced with various challenges and the clear threat posed by Baba Yaga, Vasilia, with the aid of a magical doll given to her by her deceased mother, manages to fulfill the witch's difficult tasks. In return, Baba Yaga gives Vasilia a skull lantern, which helps her overcome her stepmother's cruelty. So basically, Baba Yaga is like kind of an anti-hero to a degree, I guess, you know, that's kind of what I'm getting here. The hide behind is deeply rooted in American logging folklore, especially from tales whispered among the loggers of the Pacific Northwest. As its name suggests, the hide behind's defining trait is its uncanny ability to remain unseen, always hiding just out of view behind a tree or the person attempting to spot it. One particular story from a logging camp in Oregon in the early 1900s highlights the eerie nature of the hide-behind. A logger named Samuel recounted returning to camp one evening, feeling an unnerving sensation of being watched. He'd catch fleeting glimpses of something darting between trees in his periphery. When he tried to focus on it, though, the creature seemed to vanish and staying always frustratingly out of sight. Upon reaching the camp, Samuel shared his experience with his colleagues, and to his surprise, several nodded knowingly. They too had felt watched in that same area and spoke of the hide-behind. The creature was described as having a bear-like appearance, but with an eerie agility that always allowed it to stay hidden. As the legend goes, the hide-behind is nocturnal, preferring to stalk its prey under the cover of darkness. Some tales even speak of it as having a spine-chilling call, resembling the cry of a loon. Interestingly, many loggers believe the creature couldn't stand the smell of alcohol. This led to the convenient theory that taking a swig of whiskey wasn't just for courage, but also a deterrent against the creature. See, this one's actually kind of cool. This one has a lot of lore behind it. I like this one. This one's interesting. I like the ones that are almost nostalgic in a way, where it's about old stories and folklore and stuff. I don't know, something about that is interesting to me. I live in Western North Carolina where we have the Brown Mountain Lights near, so a lot of that stuff is really, really interesting. That kind of stuff hits home for me, The Mad Gasser of Mattoon is a fascinating piece of American urban legend and mass hysteria from the 1940s. The events unfolded in Mattoon, Illinois, where residents began reporting mysterious gas attacks in their home. These attacks left victims feeling weak, nauseated, and even paralyzed. The first reported case came from a woman who claimed that during the night she detected a strong, sweet odor in her bedroom. Shortly after, she experienced symptoms like a burning sensation in her throat and lips, followed by temporary paralysis of her legs. Not long after her account, other residents started coming forward with similar stories. The newspaper caught wind of these events, and headlines about a mad gasser roaming the streets of Mattoon began to circulate. Mattoon, I don't know how to say that. Descriptions of the supposed assailant varied, but many claimed that they saw a tall man dressed in dark clothing lurking near their homes. Footprints and a cloth supposedly soaked with this mysterious gas were even found at some of the reported attack sites. As fear gripped the town, the police began their investigations. However, the more they looked into it, the stranger things became. No solid evidence of a gasser could be found, and no individual was ever caught or identified as this mad gasser. In fact, some of the reported symptoms, like the burning sensations and paralysis, didn't align with any known gas at the time. This led authorities to consider the possibility that the events were psychological in nature. So now, nobody even really knows if this was real or if this was just a case of mass hysteria. The Travis Walton incident is one of the most famous and controversial alleged alien abduction cases. It took place in 1975 in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. On November 5th, 1975, a logging crew of 7 men, including Travis Walton, was driving home from a day's work in the forest. As they were returning, the crew saw a bright light and, upon closer inspection, what they described as a large, silvery disc hovering close to the ground. Walton, intrigued and perhaps recklessly curious, left the truck and approached the object. Suddenly, according to Walton and later corroborated by his fellow workers, a beam of light struck him and he was thrown backward. The crew, in fear, drove away, leaving Walton behind. However, after a short distance, they felt a surge of guilt and concern and decided to return to help him. But when they got back to the spot, both Walton and this mysterious object were gone. After failing to find Walton, the crew reported the incident to the police. Given the nature of their claim, they were met with skepticism, and suspicion quickly arose that they might have harmed Walton and concocted this alien story as just a cover-up. For 5 days, Walton was missing. Search parties combed the area, but there was no trace of him. Then, on November 10th, Walton reappeared, disoriented and in a weakened state, at a gas station several miles from where he'd vanished. He recounted a bewildering tale. After being struck by the light, he woke up in a sterile room, seemingly aboard the craft. He described encountering humanoid beings with large eyes, as well as more human-looking figures. They didn't communicate with him in a way he could understand, and he felt scared and overwhelmed during the whole ordeal. After what felt like hours, he found himself back in Arizona. Days had passed on Earth. The incident became a media sensation. Both Walton and his fellow crew members underwent polygraph tests, which are like lie detector tests, regarding the event. While there were some inconsistencies and debates about the polygraph results, the majority of the crew, including Walton, were found to be truthful in what they said. So, I don't know. This one seems pretty reliable. I don't know. But what do I know? just a 17-year-old in my room, North Carolina. The Bat Squatch is a creature of modern folklore and cryptozoology, and as its name suggests, it's described as a combination of a bat and a Sasquatch. Bat Squatch is said to be a flying cryptid, and its sightings are primarily associated with the Pacific Northwest, particularly the Mount St. Helens region, which, by the way, you know is the same place where Bigfoot is said to be, at least in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know about the mountain. According to descriptions, Bat Squatch has a humanoid appearance with purple skin, leathery wings like a bat that can span up to 50 feet, blood red eyes, and a face that's a mix between a bat and a primate. It's said to be about 9 feet tall and has the ability to affect car engines and electronics. In April 1994, Brian Canfield was driving in Washington's Pierce County when his truck suddenly died. Canfield said a large creature landed in front of him. He said it was human-like, 9 feet tall with bat-like wings, and it also sported a coat of blue fur. Ever since then, it has not been seen, and skeptics dismissed it as like a hoax. A second possible sighting was reported in 2009 near Mount Shasta in California. Several hikers witnessed a huge creature with leathery wings spanning 50 feet fly out of a crevice in the mountain. At first, an eyewitness described the creature as having a head similar to a pterodactyl. However, upon reconsideration, the witness claimed it was more akin to a flying fox bat, quote-unquote. Momo, short for the Missouri Monster, is a cryptid reported to roam the woods and countryside of Missouri, particularly within the vicinity of Louisiana, Missouri, where it was first reported. It's one of the lesser-known North American Bigfoot legends, but is significant in local folklore. Descriptions of Momo vary, but common characteristics include a large, over 7 foot tall, hairy creature on 2 legs with a pronounced pumpkin-shaped head and a face obscured by hair. The creature is said to emit a foul odor, an attribute often associated with other Bigfoot-like entities in different regions. The first Momo sighting was in July 1972. 2 young boys were playing in their backyard in Louisiana, Missouri, when they reportedly witnessed a large, black, hairy creature standing near the edge of the woods. The creature was said to be holding a dead dog. Following this encounter, the town experienced a wave of Momo sightings. People claimed to see the creature lurking near woods, hear its vocalizations, and even find large, unidentifiable footprints. During the height of the Momo frenzy, local residents and monster hunters tried to track down the beast. Newspapers and television stations covered the events, drawing attention and curiosity seekers to the area. The Dark Watchers, or as early Spanish settlers called them, Los Vigilantes Obscuros, are enigmatic figures rooted in the folklore of California's Santa Lucia Mountains. These shadowy humanoid entities are often described as tall, sometimes over 10 feet in height, and are said to be clothed in dark, hooded cloaks or hats. They are reported to be standing still, silently watching travelers from the ridgelines and peaks of the mountains, their figures silhouetted against the sky. This one, oh my gosh, I love this one. This one is just so like nostalgic and creepy, and there's just something about like this idea of like a dark watcher just in the woods while you're hiking or driving. It's just like, I don't know, man, it's got like this like liminal vibe. I don't know, I love it. Anyways, the first mentions of these mysterious figures can be traced back to the Chumash people, I don't know, an indigenous tribe who have lived on the central coast of California and the Channel Islands for thousands of years. They have oral legends that speak of these figures. The early Spanish settlers and Mexican ranchers also passed down stories of seeing dark watchers in the hills, after which they would vanish, leaving no footprints or any other trace of their presence. Notably, the renowned author John Steinbeck made a brief mention of the Dark Watchers in his short story, Flight. In it, he wrote, "Peep looked up to the top of the next dry, withered ridge. He saw a dark form against the sky, a man's figure standing on top of a rock, and he glanced away, quick not to appear curious." And after this mention, the character avoids eye contact with the figure, sensing an eerie presence. Another California author, Robinson Jeffers, also references the Dark Watchers in his poetry. In his poem, Such Counsels You Gave to Me, he writes of, quote, "forms that look human, but certainly are not human." But there hasn't been any actual like evidence of these like explanations for these sightings, or like, you know, like light tricks, you know, how it just looks like dark in certain like shapes or whatever. I don't know. It's I want to believe this is real. I want to believe that this is like real, because this is awesome. The legend of the Green Children of Woolpit is one of those tales that blurs the line between history and myth. It's a story that originates from the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England during the 12th century. One day, the villagers discovered 2 children, a brother and a sister near one of the town's wolf pits. These weren't ordinary children though. Their skin was green, their clothes unfamiliar, and they spoke an unknown language. Even more bizarrely, they would only eat raw beans. Bewildered but sympathetic, the villagers took them in. Over time, the kids adapted to their new surroundings. They began eating other foods, which led to the green tint of their skin fading to a more natural hue. Sadly, the boy became sick and passed away, but the girl flourished. As she learned English, she relayed her strange backstory. According to the girl, they hailed from a place called St. Martin's Land, where everything was green and it was perpetually twilight. They were tending to their father's cattle when they stumbled upon a cavern. Drawn by the sound of bells, similar to those of Woolpit's church, they ventured into the cave, and after wandering through the darkness, they emerged into the bright sunlight of Woolpit. So, I don't know, it could be aliens or whatever, it could be something weird, like this could be real, but it sounds to me like it's just somebody like a parent making up a story to like get people to like eat good food, you know, because I feel like back then, like in the 12th century, I feel like raw beans were probably like candy to them. It was like something like the kids liked, you know, and the parents were like, oh, if you don't eat your vegetables, you're gonna turn green, and this is why, this is the story. You don't want to go to this twilight place, dude. The Virginia TV Man, commonly referred to as just TV Man, became a talking point in 2019 when residents of Henrico County, Virginia, discovered old-fashioned television sets on their front porches one morning. The mysterious deliveries were made overnight. What added to the confusion was security footage that captured an individual with a TV set over their head, methodically placing these old TVs on people's porches. This individual, named the TV Man, wore a jumpsuit and gloves and managed to deliver TVs to over 50 homes in the area. The act seemed harmless, no one was threatened or injured, and no property damage occurred. A lot of the residents of the neighborhood and even YouTubers just thought it was funny, but it's definitely creepy. Now guys, I promise before you say anything, this wasn't me, okay? The third man factor, often just called the third man, is a mysterious phenomenon that's been reported by individuals who find themselves in extreme and life-threatening situations. It's the sensation that an unseen presence is nearby, offering comfort, guidance, or even physical assistance when things seem bleak. Imagine this: you're stranded on an island, or maybe lost at sea, and hope is dwindling. Just when things seem their darkest, you feel an inexplicable sense that someone or something is with you. This presence isn't threatening or creepy, but rather comforting. It might whisper words of encouragement, or you might feel a hand guiding you in the right direction. The term became popular after John Geiger's book, The Third Man Factor, was published. But tales of this mysterious helper can be traced back further in time. Polar explorer Ernest Shackleton, during his ill-fated expedition, reported the sensation of an unseen companion while crossing the mountains and glaciers of South Georgia. Similarly, climbers on Everest, survivors from the World Trade Center attacks, and even astronauts have reported encounters with this unseen third man. Some believe the third man is a guardian angel, a spiritual entity, or even the manifestation of some kind of a higher power. Others think it's the protective mechanism of the brain, maybe a release of dopamine under stress that gives the feeling of another's presence. Regardless of the cause, it's wild to think about how many have felt this invisible companion in their direst moments. This one's kind of, I don't really get this one that much. Like, I tried researching this one, I don't really get it that much. Oh, yo, there's a movie about it. It has a 99 on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8.1 on IMDb. All right, guys, that was layer 2 of this iceberg. Let's get straight into layer 3. The Owlman is a cryptid, similar in some ways to America's Mothman, but with its own unique British flair. First reported in Cornwall, England during the 1970s, the Owlman is described as a large owl-like creature with glowing eyes and, in some accounts, pincer-like claws. The first known sighting of the Owlman took place in 1976 near Manan Smith, Cornwall. Two young girls on holiday with their family claimed to have seen a large winged creature hovering over the Manan church tower. The creature was described as having large wings, feathered feet, and clawed talons. Startled by this apparition, the girls quickly returned to their family and recounted the experience. Subsequent to this, more reports began to emerge from the same area. Another notable sighting occurred later the same year when two teenage girls, independently of the first pair, also reported encountering a large owl-like figure in the vicinity of Manan Church. These encounters drew the attention of paranormal researchers and enthusiasts. Some speculated the Owlman was an undiscovered species, while others thought it might be a supernatural entity linked to like older Cornish legends and folklore. And apparently there's still like sightings in the 21st century and people are like claiming to have photographic evidence, but I don't know, man. I mean, it's just like the British to like make up a name like the Owl Man, bro. The Brazilian werewolf, known locally as lobisomem, is deeply rooted in Brazilian folklore and is similar to the werewolf legends found in European cultures. However, the Brazilian version has its own unique characteristics and origin stories that are influenced by the diverse mixture of indigenous, African, and Portuguese traditions in Brazil. In many versions of the legend, the lobisomem is the seventh son in a family of all boys. Upon reaching puberty, particularly on Friday nights during a full moon, this seventh son transforms into, a werewolf. The creature is said to be a cross between a wolf and a man, possessing sharp teeth, clawed hands, and insatiable hunger. The lobisomem roams the streets and forests during the night, hunting for food and causing terror. By sunrise, the creature returns to its human form, often with no memory of it like what it did when it was a wolf. Some regional variations of this tale have it that the transformation into a lobisomem is a curse. In certain areas, parents of a seventh son would sometimes even ask neighbors to be the child's godparents, believing that this would protect the child from becoming a werewolf. The 4chan gray alien incident refers to an event in 2017 on the image board website 4chan. It's an intriguing chapter in internet lore, and it serves as an example of how quickly rumors and alleged evidence of the paranormal can spread and evolve online. So one evening in February 2017, an anonymous user posted on 4chan's poll board, I don't know how 4chan works, anyways, claiming to have leaked information related to extraterrestrial life. Shortly after, another user posted a blurry image of what appeared to be a gray alien, the classic depiction of extraterrestrials with a large head and big black eyes. The picture was taken in what seemed to be a dimly lit, possibly outdoor environment. Almost immediately after the image was posted, it was removed by the site, and the entire thread became inaccessible. This rapid deletion spurred a flurry of speculation and conspiracy theories. Some users suggested the image was genuine, arguing that its swift removal was proof of a cover, and other people just thought it was a hoax, But then what added even more fuel to this fire was that some users who tried to save or repost the image reported unusual computer behavior, like freezing or crashing. These reports further deepened the mystery and led some to suggest that there may have been some kind of digital safeguard embedded in the image to prevent its distribution. See, this one's kind of still a mystery, bro, low-key. Intulo is a creature from the folklore of a southern African region, particularly among the Bantu-speaking peoples. It's described as a reptilian entity, often likened to a lizard or chameleon, but with certain peculiar features that distinguish it from any known animal species. According to local tales, the Intulo is longer than the average lizard and has a more serpentine appearance. One of its more distinctive features is its feet. Instead of regular reptilian lizard feet, the Intulo's feet resemble those of a human or a monkey, depending on the specific story being told. There are various legends and superstitions associated with the Intulo. In some stories, it's considered a bad omen or a sign of witchcraft. Coming across an Intulo might be seen as a warning of impending misfortune or an indication that someone in the community is practicing dark magic. Okay, so a man of smoke. Let me tell a story about this. Mike is a 50-year-old man with a background in electrical engineering, and he had a truly bizarre experience with a supposedly alien elemental entity on December 20th, 2003 in California's Litchfield. Mike is actually his real first name, but his last name has become a mystery, to protect like his identity or whatever. And this is the story that he told right here. On a clear winter's night in 2003, while trying to take a break from a demanding project, Mike witnessed a peculiar cigar-shaped object suspended in the night sky above his secluded property. Initially dismissing it as some kind of a blimp, his skepticism was shattered when a flash of pink light revealed a figure in his yard that looked like a man composed entirely of smoke. This smoky figure, which stood taller than an average human and lacked discernible facial features, began approaching Mike's house, causing a disturbance among the local dogs and surely stirring fear within Mike himself. The subsequent events became even more alarming. As Mike retreated to the safety of his home, an overwhelming darkness enveloped his surroundings, cutting off electricity and rendering his phone useless. The intensity peaked when a thunderous pounding echoed through his home, powerful enough to knock items off shelves. This was soon followed by inexplicable voices speaking in a foreign tongue, seemingly coming from his living room. In his heightened state of fear, Mike armed himself with a baseball bat and bravely confronted the intruders, causing damage to his own possessions in the process. As abruptly as it began, the voices ceased, lights returned, and normalcy was momentarily restored. However, when the police arrived in response to Mike's distress call, they weren't quick to believe it. On the evening of October 11th, 1973, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker were fishing off a pier on the Pascagoula River when they claimed to have seen a blue bluish light in the sky. The light grew closer, revealing an oval-shaped object. Before they could react, 3 beings with rough gray skin and crab-like pincers for hands allegedly emerged from the craft and floated them on board. Once inside the craft, Hickson and Parker reported being examined by a mechanical eye-like instrument that scanned their bodies. This procedure lasted only a few minutes, after which the beings returned them to the pier. Disoriented and terrified, the 2 men immediately reported the incident to the local police. The police, while initially skeptical, were struck by the genuine fear and consistency in the men's stories. Both Hickson and Parker passed polygraph tests regarding their encounter. Over the years, Calvin Parker remained largely silent about the event, while Charles Hickson recounted the story at various UFO conferences and events until his death in 2011. The legend of the Dogman, much like the tales of Bigfoot or the Mothman, is a cryptid narrative that has intrigued and spooked many. Originating from the US state of Michigan, stories about this creature describe it as a canine being on 2 legs with the body of a muscular man and the head of a dog or a wolf. One of the most talked about encounters dates back to 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. 2 lumberjacks allegedly spotted a creature they described as having a man's body and a dog's head. They watched in horror as it approached, clearly showing it was unlike any known animal in the region. Another significant push for the Dogman legend came in 1987, when a disc jockey named Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend as an April Fool's joke for a local radio station. To his surprise, after playing the song, people began calling in, sharing their personal encounters with this creature. This unexpected response gave the Dogman lore a renewed burst of attention and made many consider the possibility of his existence more seriously. Since then, sightings and tales of encounters with the Dogman have been reported in various parts of Michigan, and even in some neighboring states. Descriptions often portray a 7-foot-tall creature with blue or amber eyes, standing erect on its hind legs and exhibiting an eerie, howling cry. Catalonia Fallen Angel videos spread across social media platforms and various websites, with many users suggesting that the creature in this video was a fallen angel or some other kind of supernatural entity. In the video, a group of people can be heard speaking in Spanish as they walk through a forested area. They come upon the creature, which appears humanoid but has long, thin limbs and a similarly thin torso. Its skin seems pale and it crouches or sits in a way that many viewers found unsettling. The group in the video appears to be just as startled and confused by the discovery, and the footage ends without a clear resolution. The Varginha UFO incident is one of Brazil's most famous UFO cases and has garnered international attention. It took place in 1996 in the town of Varginha, located in the state of Minas Gerais, Brazil. I don't care. The story began on the afternoon of January 20th, 1996. 3 local women, sisters Liliane and Valgueira Fatima Silva, along with their friend Katia Andrade Xavier, reported encountering a bizarre creature in the streets of Varginha. They described it as being humanoid in shape with a brown, shiny skin, big red eyes, and having a series of spikes or protuberances on its head. Frightened by their encounter, they ran off and later shared their story, which quickly spread throughout the town. In the following days, additional sightings of similar beings and UFOs were reported by various residents, further adding to the mystery. Rumors began to circulate that local authorities and the Brazilian military had captured one or more of these beings. Adding to the intrigue, a few local soldiers and a firefighter were rumored to have been involved in the capture of one of these creatures. Tragically, one of these soldiers, Marco Eli Xeriz, died under mysterious circumstances shortly after the events, fueling further speculations and conspiracy theories regarding a potential government cover-up here. This one's pretty interesting. This one's pretty cool. The Monkey Man of Delhi is a curious and somewhat unsettling chapter in India's urban folklore. During the summer of 2001, residents of Delhi, the nation's capital, were gripped by fear due to reports of a mysterious creature dubbed the Monkey Man. I guess Soup started doing his prank calls in real life, bruh. The creature was described by various eyewitnesses as being around 4 feet tall, covered in thick black hair with metal claws and glowing red eyes. Some even said it wore a metal helmet and had buttons on its chest. The descriptions varied, but the common theme was that of a primate-like being that could leap from building to building with ease. As reports spread, mass hysteria began to take hold. People reported injuries ranging from scratches to more serious wounds, which they attributed to attacks by this creature. The panic escalated to such a degree that residents began avoiding going out at night, and neighborhood watch groups were formed to catch or deter the Monkey Man. The police were flooded with of calls nightly, with people reporting sightings or attacks. Despite extensive investigations, the police never found concrete evidence of the creature's existence. So yeah, this one was never actually proven, sadly. The Toronto Tunnel Monster is not as widely known as some of the other cryptids or urban legends, but it certainly has its own niche in the realm of urban myths, particularly within Canadian lore. The story stems from the extensive network of tunnels that snake beneath Toronto, known as the Toronto Path, an underground pedestrian walkway. Over the years, there have been whispers and tales about a creature that allegedly dwells within these tunnels. Descriptions of this so-called tunnel monster vary, but most accounts depict it as being humanoid in shape, with rough, possibly scaly skin. It's believed to be nocturnal, preferring the quiet of the night to move around the labyrinth. One specific account of this little tunnel monster involves a maintenance worker who, while working late one night in a lesser used section of the tunnels, heard strange noises echoing through the corridor. Following these sounds, he reportedly stumbled upon a creature with glowing eyes, which quickly retreated into the darkness. Described literally as their name suggests, black stickmen are often reported as tall, thin figures that resemble a stick person drawing. Basically, extremely slender silhouettes without any discernible features. Their appearance is flat and two-dimensional, as if someone took a child's stick figure drawing and brought it to life. They move in a stilted, unnatural manner and are generally observed at night. One account from a pedestrian describes a late night walk in a quiet part of town. As the individual walked, they noticed a tall, incredibly thin figure standing on the corner. As they approached, they realized this wasn't a person, but a flat, featureless silhouette. Despite feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, the person continued walking, passing by the figure. The black stick man didn't move or interact, but its mere presence was enough to send chills down the witness's spine. What sets black stickmen apart from other shadow entities is their lack of any human features and their sheer simplicity in form. While most paranormal sightings can be rationalized or explained away by various means like misidentification, tricks with the light, psychological conditions, etc., encounters with the black stickmen are harder to dismiss because, because their appearance is so unmistakable and unique. But I don't know, because they also do just kind of look like trees in all these pictures. The ninjin, a term which means human in Japanese, is a cryptid that has emerged from the cold depths of online forums and into urban legend. Unlike its name's implication, this creature is far from your average human. Originating from Japanese internet forums in the early 2000s, the ninjin is described as a massive whale-like aquatic creature. Its size is often said to range from 20 to 30 meters in length. The most unsettling feature about this behemoth, though, isn't its sheer size, but its humanoid appearance. Witnesses often depict the ninjin with a pale human-like face, eyes, and even limbs resembling arms and legs. However, its body mostly resembles that of a large marine animal, often being compared to a beluga whale or an albino ray. How did I mess that up? Most alleged sightings of the ninjin come from fishermen and research vessels operating in the icy waters of the Antarctic. These tales often follow a similar narrative. The ship's crew spots what they initially believed to be a submarine or unusually large fish, but upon closer inspection, they realize that it's a living creature with distinctly human features. Due to the remote location of these sightings, the evidence is usually pretty scarce, limited to anecdotal testimonies and just blurry photos. This one's really creepy though. This one is, I have cetophobia personally, which is a fear of whales and dolphins. So this one gets to me, bro. Okay, we just finished layer 4, guys. Let's get into layer 5. How exciting. Michelin men or balloon men are a type of possibly extraterrestrial cryptid that had been reported on a rare number of occasions throughout the whole world. These entities were given the name Michelin men because they just kind of look like the mascot of that one tire company. In May 1960, Antonio Ribera, a teacher, was riding his motorcycle in the province of Cadiz, Spain. As he approached a particular stretch of the highway, he noticed a strange figure that stood out because of his all-red appearance. The figure, which seemed to be over 2 meters tall, walked with a peculiar, rigid, and robotic movement. As Ribera observed this entity, another being emerged, similar in appearance but shorter in height. What made the second entity even more odd was that it had a single black boot. Ribera couldn't recall on which foot the boot was, but he was certain of its presence. So yeah, then he tried to get a closer look at it, but then they vanished without trace. Black-eyed children, often referred to as black-eyed kids or Becks, are an urban legend of supposed paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 and 16, with pale skin and completely black eyes. These entities are often reported approaching people in secluded areas, sometimes knocking on doors of homes or cars and asking for entrance. Their demeanor is typically monotone and insistent, yet unsettling, and those who encounter them feel an overwhelming sense of unease and fear. One of the most common threads of black-eyed children encounters is their seemingly universal need to gain permission to enter a vehicle or home, like a vampire. They might say they need to call their parents or just need to come in for some vaguely explained reason. Despite their youthful appearance, their speech patterns and mannerisms are often described as mature and overly formal, which adds to the unsettling nature of these encounters. An example of a black-eyed children's sighting might go something like this. A homeowner hears a knock on their door late at night. Upon answering, they find one or two children standing on the porch, who ask to be let in to use the phone. The children's eyes are completely black, no whites can be seen. The homeowner feels an intense, irrational fear, and despite the children's pleas, refuses to let them in. After closing the door and perhaps peeking out a window, the children have vanished without a trace. The origins of this legend is kind of hard to pinpoint, but we do know that they started about getting more attention in the late 1990s. After a lot of reports of these encounters started to appear online, because that was when the internet was getting more popular. Whoa. The Chuchanya is a lesser-known cryptid said to inhabit remote areas of Siberia, particularly in the mountainous regions. Often described as a hominid or humanoid creature, the Chuchunya has some similarities to Bigfoot or the Yeti in terms of general descriptions and lore. Stories of the Chuchanya describe the creature as being between 6 to 7 feet tall, with a muscular build, long arms, and covered in reddish-brown or dark hair. Its face is often described as being closer to humans than to apes, though details vary between accounts. Accounts of the Chuchunya have existed for generations among local indigenous tribes. They've described the creature as being shy and reclusive, with behaviors that are more human-like than animalistic. The Chuchunya is said to craft primitive tools, wear clothing made from animal skins, and even build makeshift shelters. One specific story involves a Russian hunter in the 1920s who claimed to have captured a female Chuchunya. The creature, according to the tale, was able to communicate through rudimentary gestures and was exhibited in a cage for a period of time before escaping. The Grassman, also known as the Ohio Grassman, is a cryptid reported to inhabit the grasslands of Ohio. It's often described as being similar to Bigfoot in appearance, suggesting a link between the two, or possibly that they're different regional names for the same creature. The Grassman stands at roughly 7 to 9 feet tall and is covered in long, shaggy hair. The creature's name is derived from the small hut-like living structures it supposedly builds out of tall grass. Sightings of the Grassman have been reported for decades. One of the more famous encounters occurred in the 1970s when a family in Minerva, Ohio, reported seeing the creature on multiple occasions. They described it as a large, hairy being on 2 legs that was frequently spotted near a strip mine behind their home. During one incident, the family said that they saw the creature holding a dog and peering at them through their window. Another notable aspect of the Grassman legend is its supposed aggressive nature. While Bigfoot encounters often depict Bigfoot as being more shy and elusive, the Grassman is usually seen as being more aggressive and territorial. Napoleon's Little Red Man, also referred to as the Red Man of Destiny or L'Homme Rouge, is a legendary figure said to have appeared to Napoleon Bonaparte at various crucial moments in his life. The tales of this mysterious figure are steeped in folklore and are considered by most historians to be apocryphal or mythological rather than based on actual events. According to the legend, this spectral figure, dressed entirely in red, first appeared to Napoleon in his early days before he rose to prominence. The Little Red Man is said to have made prophetic statements about Napoleon's future, predicting his rise to power as Emperor of the French, after which it's alleged that this enigmatic figure visited Napoleon before many of his significant military campaigns and major decisions, offering advice or warnings. This one's kind of cool. This one's kind of historic and weird. The Manta Man is a flying humanoid cryptid reportedly spotted in northern Chile. It is seemingly very vicious and has been seen devouring dogs. The Manta Man was described as a man-sized humanoid creature with large manta ray fin-like membranous wings built into his arms. In the 1970s, in Sandown, Isle of Wight, England, there were reports of a bizarre encounter with a so-called Sandown clown. A young boy named Stephen claimed to have been approached by a strange figure while playing in his backyard. This figure was described as having a pale, almost white face with bright red hair that resembled a wig and was dressed in a one-piece suit, which was green with yellow spots. Stephen said the figure had a high-pitched voice and communicated with him telepathically. The clown-like being supposedly told Stephen that his name was Zany and asked him to come aboard a ship. Understandably, the boy was hesitant and ultimately declined. The being then reportedly produced produced a small device that emitted a humming noise, after which Stephen felt an odd sensation and found himself standing alone with no sign of this weird clown thing. And nobody could ever figure out what really happened here, so this is kind of one of the more like unusual and weird like accounts of the UFO encounter thing. The term butterfly people often refers to a heartwarming and mysterious phenomenon that was reported during the devastating Joplin tornado in Missouri on May 22nd, 2011. Residents of Joplin, particularly children, reported seeing butterfly people in the midst of the storm. These entities were described as angelic winged figures that were either shaped like butterflies or had butterfly-like wings. These beings were said to have protected or aided individuals during the tornado, diverting debris, shielding people, or helping them find safety. For instance, one story tells of a young boy who was in a vehicle lifted by the tornado. He reported that a butterfly person was in the car with them and protected him until the vehicle was set down. Another tale speaks of a mother and daughter who were caught outside and saw a group of butterfly people hovering over a certain spot. They ran to that spot and were unharmed, while other nearby locations were devastated. On October 25th, 1974, Carl Higdon, a 41-year-old oil well driller, took a day off to hunt elk in Medicine Bow National Park, Wyoming. During his hunt, after firing his rifle at an elk, he observed the bullet moved unusually slowly, as if through a viscous kind of thing. Following this, he was approached by a 6-foot alien being named Osso-1. This extraterrestrial, dressed in a black, form-fitting suit, had a unique appearance. Coarse, straw-like hair, small eyes without eyebrows, a mouth that blended into its neck, and a peculiar wrist appendage. The being offered Higdon food in the form of pills and eventually invited him into his cubic spaceship. Higdon recalled being given a tour of Osso-1's home planet during what seemed like a lapse in time. This one's kind of cool. The Crimean slug sighting is an extraterrestrial sighting that took place on November 18th, 1998 in Dalkoi, Crimea, Russia. 4 boys from the local elementary school, Eldar Islamov, Anton Kireshev, Server Delvatov, and Alesha Aliyabiev, had gone out of the school building to use the toilet. On their way, they heard a strange guttural sound coming from behind them, and looking back, they saw a strange humanoid entity climbing over the fence. The alien approached one of the boys and put its hand on his shoulder. The boy felt neither heaviness nor pain and tried to push it away. The boys noticed that the entity had some kind of device with a button attached to its elbow. The alien then pressed the button with his clawed finger, and immediately the alien was sucked through the wall of the school building. Only the entity's red eyes could still be seen on the wall. The boy's skin turned red on the place where the entity had touched him, but he felt no pain or any kind of burning or anything. The entity was approximately 1.7 meters in height. The alien had a large head, not in proportion to its body, 2 huge red eyes, and a square, flat body. Its long arms touched the ground, and it ended in 3 clawed black fingers. The legs of the entity were black and straight. The rest of its body was semi-transparent, kind of smoky in color. The boys noticed neither hair nor mouth, nor ears or nose. Cloakman of Clifton Heights, occasionally referred to as the Woman of Clifton Heights, was a strange humanoid entity reported several times near Philadelphia in 1916. On Saturday night, November 23rd, shortly before 11 o'clock, Joseph Austin of Berkeley Avenue was accompanying a young woman to her home. While walking on Walnut Street near Fairview Avenue, a tall person wearing a long black cloak and a hood stepped in front of Austin and the young woman. He pushed his long hands into the young man's face and muttered something inaudible. Austin's hair raised his hat, while the young lady was badly frightened by the sudden appearance of the cloaked person, who didn't harm the couple but turned swiftly and fled. Austin, after accompanying the young woman back home, returned to Baltimore Avenue, where he informed Chief McGowan. The news spread quickly, and in less than 10 minutes, several hundred men started a hunt for this cloaked man, but he was never found. Several young men did locate a cloaked person in a small orchard on Walnut Street and Fairview Avenue, but the mysterious one dashed out of the place and soon disappeared. This one's kind of like actually believable, so it's kind of like creepy, you know? The Canula humanoid sighting is an extraterrestrial sighting that took place in the evening of February 2nd, 1971. At approximately 8 p.m., 2 Finnish women, Sinikka Kutinen and one Mrs. Maninen, were driving from Kusamo towards Oulu when they spied a strange light behind their car on the right side of the road. After a few moments, this mysterious light slipped over the vehicle and began to pace the car on the left side of the road. The entity was described as a peculiar helmeted creature that stood approximately 3 feet tall. This mysterious entity was clad in a greenish-brown suit and crossed the road in front of the 2 women, utilizing a series of small jumps, like Frogger. On the front of the head was a faceplate that was described as being akin to that of a scuba diver. Although the creature had arms and legs, the suit gave no indication of hands or fingers. On the snowy, overcast afternoon of February 5th, 1971, 2 Finnish lumberjacks, 21-year-old Peter Ali Ranta and 18-year-old Esko Juhani Snek also had a close encounter with the same entity. The fantastic event began at approximately 3 p.m. when the young duo, who had spent the morning cutting down trees in the forests near the village of Kingaskaila and Kanula, decided to call it a day because the overcast conditions were making it too dark to continue. According to their account, Ali Ranta had just turned off his chainsaw when he suddenly noticed an odd metallic object hovering at treetop level. He claimed that it was shaped like two saucers on top of each other and was about 15 feet in diameter. At the bottom of the vehicle, there were 4 thin landing legs with rounded bases, which he estimated to be more than 6 feet long. If the craft made any sound, it was no doubt overwhelmed by the continued roaring of Snek's chainsaw. Ali Ranta continued to watch as a circular portal opened at the base of the slowly descending ship. Within moments, the object landed in a small clearing between the trees, less than 50 feet away from the awestruck lumberjack and his still oblivious comrade. When the spaceman exited the craft, Ali Ranta attempted to capture it, but was surprised to find that the creature's spacesuit burned to the touch. The wounds caused by the contact with the boot were, according to reports, still clearly visible 2 months later. So it's like maybe wherever this person is from, the temperature is different there or something, because I mean, if it was burning, maybe it wasn't even a temperature burn, maybe it was some kind of chemical burn or something. The Hampton Court Palace ghost, sometimes referred to as Skeletor, relates to a piece of CCTV footage from Hampton Court Palace in England, released in 2003. The footage appears to show a ghostly figure in a period dress opening a fire door. The door would open by itself, followed by the appearance of a ghostly figure. This figure seemed to be wearing old-fashioned, possibly Tudor-era clothing. Hampton Court Palace is a historic palace located in London and was once a favorite residence of King Henry VIII. Due to its long history, the palace is said to be haunted, and there are many ghost stories associated with it. Abariman is a legendary race of people native to a country of the same name. The inhabitants are described as having backwards feet, but despite this are able to run at great speeds. These peculiar people and their homeland are mentioned by ancient authors, most notably Pliny the Elder in his Natural History book. According to Pliny, the Abariman people live in a valley of the Himalayas, which is remarkably fertile and temperate. Due to the unique quality of the air in this valley, the inhabitants, as well as any animals or other people who enter it, can't leave, otherwise they would die. The idea of humans with reversed feet appears in various mythologies and legends around the world, and the Abariman account is one of the more intriguing examples. Like many tales from antiquity, it is difficult to determine if such accounts were based on distorted observations of real-world phenomena, exaggerations, or purely imaginative stories. Yo, we just finished layer 5. Let's go straight into layer 6, guys. It's like, I think we're halfway through. I think there are 10 layers, so we're halfway through. The elephant humanoids were a strange series of sightings that reported wrinkled humanoids on 2 feet with a snout. These creatures, or creature, was spotted in Narrabeen Lake, which is in South Wales, Australia. In 1968, a woman named Mabel Walsh saw a strange being standing in her lake. Her description was this: it was a bit over 4 feet tall, with dark gray, tough, leathery skin like an elephant. It had small front legs and walked on its hind legs, which were thick and round like an elephant. There were no tail or ears, but I saw a trunk that was like an anteater's, rigid and square to the end, and stuck out at an angle. It then came out of the water, stood up on its legs, and ran into a bush with a shuffling sideways run. In 1971, there were 2 fishermen who were fishing on Narrabeen Lake at night. They saw a peculiar, brutish gray animal with an unusual locomotion as it went through the water. Later that night, an anonymous woman said she was awoken by a horrible gurgling noise. There was no proof it was the same creature though. This one's kind of weird. This one's kind of interesting. It's like unique. I kind of like it. The Ilkley Moor alien sighting is an extraterrestrial sighting that took place on December 1st, 1987, when a retired police officer named Philip Spencer was walking on the moorlands near Yorkshire, England, when he spotted a UFO in one of its occupants. There isn't really much to talk about here. There isn't a lot of information online about this one, other than the entity appears to be humanoid in shape with a large head and lanky arms that hang down to the ground. And if I'm wrong on this one, I'm sorry guys. Please don't hang me for this. In Kofu City, located in Yamanashi Prefecture, Japan, a peculiar encounter transpired on February 23rd, 1975 that has since been associated with extraterrestrial phenomena. A young boy named Michio Seo and 4 of his friends were engaged in play within a vineyard when they stumbled upon 2 distinctive small figures. At first glance, the boys mistook these beings for young children, perhaps kindergartners. However, upon closer observation, it became glaringly apparent that these were not human children. Standing approximately 4 feet tall, these entities donned shiny silver suits. Their heads, disproportionately large for their bodies, featured wide slit eyes. But the most striking feature was their prominent fang-like teeth. Reports Reports indicate that one of the creatures seemed engaged in collecting samples from the ground. The sight was sufficiently unsettling for the children, leaving them gripped by fear and forever marking this event in local lore and on the internet apparently. Alien Bigfoot. Sorry, that name is just funny. Alien Bigfoot is a cryptid that is typically sighted shortly after a UFO sighting. The sightings are mainly in Pennsylvania. On the night of July 31st, 1966, a group of 4 friends were having a vacation at a local beach in Eerie, Pennsylvania. When they went to leave, their tire was stuck in the mud. One of the boys went to find a tow truck, leaving the other boy and 2 girls alone. Several hours passed and the friend still wasn't back. Then in the night sky, they saw a figure flying in the sky. They took a close look and didn't really know what it was. Then a purple flash of light beamed in the sky and the UFO-like figure summoned a bluish purple light on the ground and flew off. Then a policeman showed up, wondering why they were sitting there at the late time that it was. They explained that they were stuck and they were waiting for their friend to get back. The officer offered to go take a look, so the other boy went along, leaving the 2 girls alone. Later, they saw something rustling in the bushes. Then a 6 to 8 foot tall figure trudged out and growled at the 2. They were very frightened and the beast ran up and attacked their car. Eventually, when the others got back, the girls told their story. Another sighting took place in 1966 in a very southern part of Pennsylvania. A woman was sitting in her chair in 1966. She heard something on her back porch. She thought a pack of dogs had returned, so she got her gun. When she got out, she saw a hairy humanoid about 50 feet away. She took a shot at it, but it teleported away. Then her son-in-law came over with his gun. Then about 8 of the creatures appeared and growled at him, and he ran away and dropped his flashlight. In Falkville, Alabama, on October 17th, 1973, a spaceship was spotted out on a field. When the authorities got involved, the chief, Jeff Greenhaw, didn't see a spaceship, but instead saw something he would later regret: an alien. The tinfoil alien was clad in a suit fabricated from or similar to thick aluminum foil, intensely bright and, quote, as smooth as glass. Its movements were childlike or even monkey-like, but at the same time very robotic and mechanical. There appeared to be no separation between the neck and head, which bore an antenna. It ran at speeds that, according to Greenshaw, far exceeded that of any human he'd ever seen. It seemed to have a literal spring in its step, covering 3 meters at every step. According to Zanfretta, on December 6, 1978, at approximately 11:30 at night, he was examining the Villa Casa Nostra, and upon entering the backyard, saw a red oval object with a diameter of over 10 meters. At this point, he called his supervisor, who recalled him screaming. On turning around, Zanfretta reported running into beings who were 3 meters tall, with mottled skin as though they were fat or wearing a rumpled suit. The creature had yellow triangular eyes and clawed feet. When the supervisor asked if he was being attacked by men, Zanfretta was said to have responded, "No, they are not men," at which point communication was lost. Zanfretta was later found unconscious and in a state of shock by his colleagues. Later, when under hypnosis, Zanfretta would claim that the beings had abducted him and taken him into a bright room in their craft. He also added to the description of the alien beings, saying, "They are green with triangular yellow eyes, with big thorns. They have green flesh, and their skin is so full of wrinkles as if they were old. Their mouths look like they're made of iron, and they have red veins on their heads, pointed ears, and arms with fingernails, with round things. They come from the 3rd galaxy." This is weird, bro. This one is like, I couldn't make that up if I was just like trying to like make something up. I mean, maybe I could actually, but it seems kind of realistic. The term flannel shirt Sasquatch denotes a rare subcategory of North American hominid sightings, in which the mysterious creature appeared to be wearing human clothes, most consistently a ragged flannel shirt or otherwise animal skins. In the 1960s and 1970s, reports from the American West would occasionally surface of a hairy Bigfoot kind of thing being seen with tattered plaid shirts and ragged shorts on their bodies. In some research, there were intriguing attempts to relate these to files of paranormal encounters with sightings of upright entities said to be wearing checkered shirts. Within parapsychology, there is a subfield of study regarding checkered shirted ghosts. One of the most fascinating of all such encounters occurred in California at the turn of the 1950s. The story came from a woman who, at the time of the incident, was a young girl. Her story was told by cryptozoologist and Bigfoot authority Ivan T. Sanderson as the following: "I entered the meadow and proceeded to cross it in order to reach a small knoll at the other side. When I approached the foot of the knoll, I heard a sound. It was the sound of someone walking, and I thought perhaps my little brother had followed me and was going to jump out and try to scare me. I hollered, 'Alright, stinker, I know you're there.' Needless to say, it was not my brother that appeared. Instead, it was a creature that I will never forget as long as I live. He stepped out of the bushes and I froze like a statue. He, or it, it was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall. However, there's one thing that I have not mentioned, the strangest and most frightening thing of all. He had on clothes. Yes, that's right. They were tattered and torn and barely covered him, but they were still there. He made a horrifying growling sound that I don't think could be imitated by any living being. Believe me, I turned and ran as fast as I could. I reached camp winded and stayed scared all while we were there. Janet and Colin Board, noted Bigfoot experts, say the following of this downright weird affair. If Bigfoot and the creature in this report really does sound like a Bigfoot, it is as well adapted to living in the wild as most reports suggest, why does he need to don tattered clothes? That's what I want to know. Why is he wearing clothes, bro? The Jacobs photographs were a series of photos taken by R. Jacobs in 2007 that show a furry primate-like creature appearing after 2 bear cubs were filmed at an earlier time. Many have speculated that it could be a juvenile Sasquatch or another mystery primate. Others have simply deemed it a mangy black bear who, under poor light conditions, took the appearance of a primate. Jerry Fieser of the Pennsylvania Game Commission was under great pressure from the public for answers on what was in the photos. He said, "One of the things bears do is they will rub their heads on the ground just like dogs do." Matt Moneymaker, head of the BFRO, said he agrees with Fieser on one point, that they want the mystery solved and were setting out to replicate the photos. They failed other than a chimpanzee photo that appears to be in the same position. The photos, taken by a trail camera set up in a forest, shot 2 pictures of the odd creature 30 seconds apart because the Bushnell game camera used by the hunter was set on a 30-second delay. Ain Wei and Poti Wolo's description of this humanoid is similar to Ibu Gogo of Bahawa people stories, with a hairy body, long downward earlobe, and long breasts. They are reported to be about 1 meter in height. One unique feature is that they are said to be pig-snouted. Superstitious local people thought that the 2 creatures are supernatural beings, able to change its looks to other forms. Sightings are said to be common in Flores Island, but only a few have been documented. Petrus Jamadi, a farmer, said that he's met the creature once. At first, this looked like an ape, but a moment later, the creature changed. He said that in silhouette they are identical, but the latter form has a snout-like mouth. JJack Mysterious, or Mysterious Treks, is a team that also made an expedition to Flores Island. They are investigating a cave called the Yang Poti, which means Cave of Demons, that the local people said to be the home of Ain Wei and Poti Wolo. The entrance of the cave is so small that a man can only enter in prone position, but the chamber inside is much larger. The team tried to go deeper into the cave, but some chambers can't be accessed by humans. When morning breeze came from the direction of the entrance, the team recorded a movement of short humanoid beings behind the rocks. The Brian Scott abduction case from March 14th, 1971 near Apache Junction, Arizona is a captivating incident within the UFO community, containing several hallmarks of the typical alien encounter narrative. On that day, Brian Scott was driving through a desert area outside of Apache Junction when his car suddenly malfunctioned. The engine ceased to run. Stranded in the vast expanse of the desert, Scott tried to deduce the issue. As he was inspecting the vehicle, his attention was drawn to the sky by a glowing object that rapidly descended and landed a short distance away. From this luminous craft, several humanoid figures emerged. Scott described them as bearing in large craniums devoid of hair with prominent slanted eyes that gave an impression of depth and intelligence. These beings didn't speak verbally. Instead, Scott claimed he was communicated with telepathically. It's kind of crazy that all these cases have that common thread where these aliens are talking telepathically. Anyways, they conveyed a sense of calm, urging him to not fear. Scott was then escorted into their vessel. He recounted how the interior was starkly lit, exuding an almost clinical atmosphere. He was subjected to a thorough medical examination, the nature and purpose of which being unclear to him. During his time inside the craft, the beings allegedly shared images and information with Scott. They offered insights into their origin, their mission, and the broader universe. The specifics of these revelations, however, either remained deeply personal to Scott or were lost to time. Following this profound experience, Scott was returned to his car. As the alien craft ascended back and disappeared, he realized that a significant amount of time had elapsed, a phenomenon frequently described as missing time by many who claim to have had similar experiences. The Ariel School alien sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place on September 16th, 1994 at the Republic of Zimbabwe's Ariel School, a private elementary school about 20 miles outside the capital city of Harare. Bro, I feel like future these chains are like hella loud, bro, you hear that? feel like the future, bro. Anyways, the event began at approximately 10:15 while the children, who ranged in age from 5 to 12 years old, were playing in the field adjacent to the school during their mid-morning break. The children claimed that while they were playing, they noticed 3 silver balls soaring in the sky above the school. These orbs, which quickly caught the attention of the whole group, intermittently flashed red and would disappear in a burst of light and then reappeared in another section of the sky. According to the eyewitnesses, these mysterious metallic objects vanished and rematerialized 3 more times before slowly descending toward the school, following a line of transmission towers. The anxious kids then claimed that one of the silver UFOs dropped lower than the other and landed in a cluster of gum trees about 300 feet from where they were playing. It was at that moment that this already strange scene took a turn of the bizarre when a small black-clad humanoid figure, approximately 3 feet in height, emerged from the top of the object. The witnesses claimed that the being's suit was shiny and tight-fitting. They also stated that it had a scrawny neck, a narrow face, thin arms and legs, long black hair, and huge eyes like rugby balls. The entity, apparently unaware of the growing crowd of spectators, scrambled down to the rough patch of earth, presumably to explore the terrain. The creature apparently moved back and forth in the scrub bush, like it was, quote, bouncing as if he were on the moon, but not quite so much. The Silver Man sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place at approximately 11:30 p.m. on the evening of March 17th, 1978. A 39-year-old service engineer by the name of Ken Edwards was making the 15-mile journey home to Warrington Newtown Development following a union meeting in Greater Manchester. Edwards claimed that he first spied what he thought was a man climbing, but he quickly realized that he was looking at a gargantuan humanoid figure lumbering down the steep embankment adjacent to the nuclear facility. The startled engineer immediately hit the brakes, and his van slowed to a halt near the curb of the road some 50 feet away from the hulking humanoid, which was now illuminated by his headlights. The anxious engineer estimated the figure was at least 7 feet in height and was either clad in some sort of reflective silver fabric akin to a radiation suit, or had a dull metallic kind of skin. He also claimed that the figure's roundish face was black, or that it was covered with some sort of mask, with no discernible features except for a pair of glowing eyes. Oh my god, is that a 21 Pilots reference? Okay, if any of you actually got that reference without looking it up about glowing eyes, you're my favorite. That song goes crazy. It's like this old song that's not on any of their studio albums, like it's like unreleased, but oh my gosh, it's so good, bro. Anyways, the figure had 2 thin arms that were not attached at its shoulders, but stuck straight out of its chest like a T-Rex. Edwards also noticed that this creature assumed an odd, stooped posture as it scrambled down the hill, which seemed impossible for a human to emulate without toppling over, so it couldn't have been just a person, you know? Alright guys, my mom just went to sleep, so I'm gonna have to talk a little bit quieter now. Alright. Pe de Garafa, Cube Rope, Palobo, or Bottlefoot is an unknown ghost or primate of South America, said to be in mostly Brazil, but also some other places. This thing is human-looking. Its height is about 5 feet. It has black skin and a long head of hair. There's a horn in the forehead of it. It has large hands and no feet, somehow. It stares very intently, as if to hypnotize people. It roars loudly, and its tracks resemble the print made by sticking the bottom of a bottle in the ground, hence the name Bottlefoot. And it seems pretty smart too, because the footprints avoid all obstacles. The Nas Nas is a mythical creature derived from Arabic folklore. It's described as a half-human being with only half of a head, 1 arm, 1 leg, and with the respective halves of a body. Imagine a person split vertically in half, and you'd have the rough idea of what a Nas Nas looks like. It hops around on its single leg. The Nas Nas is one of many creatures mentioned in Middle Eastern tales, often used to scare children or to caution people about the mysteries of the unknown desert lands. Its origins can be traced back to various sources, including pre-Islamic Arabian mythology and later Islamic texts. In some legends, the Nas Nas is not just a singular creature, but a species of beings. Their appearance, behavior, and stories about them vary based on the region and specific folklore. In some stories, they are seen as mischievous or harmful, while in others, they are merely strange beings that coexist with humans. Alright, that was layer 5. Hey, who is ready for layer 6? Come on, raise your hand. Raise your hand. I don't see you raising your hand, bro. Come on, put the hand up. Okay, put it down, you look weird. The Farmersville Green Man sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place in May of 1913. near Farmersville, Texas. While chopping cotton one May morning, Clyde, Sid, and Sylvie Latham heard their 2 dogs barking as if in distress. The 3 brothers ran to see what was bothering them and found the dogs had cornered a small green man which appeared to be made out of rubber. In an instant, the dogs were upon the man and shredded him in their teeth, leaving only miniature human-like remains. The disturbing incident remained a family tradition until Sylvie's grandson related the story in a letter to the Center for UFO Research. Sylvie Latham himself was later interviewed by Larry Sessions of the Center for UFO Research, but the transcript has been lost, sadly. But still, from Latham we can get a little bit of a description. No taller than 18 inches, the dark green creature was devoid of clothing save for a small hat similar to a sombrero, which was fused to his rubbery, quote, skin. This hat was at the back of his head and was described as like a small sombrero and being shaped together with the remainder of the rubber-like skin or tight-fitting suit of the little character. On this point, all witnesses appear to have been undecided as to whether the rubbery texture was skin or an external suit. His arms hung downward along his body. Curiously, the little man did not respond to being seen by the boys, nor did it even move or cry out when attacked by the dogs. As Latham would recollect, quote, he looked like a man taken for a halt. Amphir Liath Moor, or Big Grey Man, is known to stalk the people who climb the mountain Ben Macdoohey, the 2nd highest peak in Scotland. Because of the high levels of fog there, not many people have seen it. Some believe the Grey Man to be a guardian of the mountain, but others believe him to be a guardian of a gate to other dimensions. The Grey Man is reported to be a very tall humanoid with at least 8 feet in height, although sometimes he's described to be as high as 30 feet. He's covered in short gray hair, hence the name. Many times witnesses didn't even see him, but still could hear him due to the loud footsteps. Some believe the Grey Man is relative to Sasquatch or Bigfoot because it normally stalks its victims until they realize that it's following them and then it chases them. This is a common pattern. It walks on 2 legs and walks and runs like a normal person. The Grey Man is often encountered in physical sensation, but without a physical form, truly. Like, sensations of this type include vast dark blurs which obscure the sky, strange crunching noises, echoing footsteps which pursue the listener, an icy feeling in the surrounding atmosphere, as well as a physical feeling of a cold grip on or brush against the observer's flesh. There is also a high-pitched humming noise, or the singing as it is sometimes called, which is associated with Ben Macdoohey and the Grey Man. The most common place the Grey Man is on the mountain, but he's also been commonly spotted in a forest near Aberdeen Rothiemurchus Forest. References of the wild Grey Man date all the way back to the 13th century. Since then, many climbers have reported seeing, hearing, or even feeling the Grey Man. In 1925, a climber by the name of Professor J. Normal Colley reported hearing the Grey Man. He said that for every 2 or 3 steps he took, he heard one loud crunch. All the while, he was speed walking at a reasonable pace, but the footsteps were coming closer and closer. At last, he couldn't bear it anymore, and he sprinted away. Another encounter with a Grey Man was reported in the forest near Aberdeen. 3 men were walking and reported seeing a large creature that looked like a man, but had an eerie, inhuman voice. A couple weeks later, the Grey Man showed up and chased their car, trying to get in. He chased them a short distance, but went up to 45 miles per hour. So by now, you probably know what a biblically accurate angel looks like. Every 11-year-old on the internet tries to tell everyone about it because of how cool it is, and they think they're all so special. The Angel of Hertford is a famous humanoid angel that has been sighted. The following story takes place in England in the early 1700s, and this is a quote. We have an account of a surprising phenomenon that was seen near Hertford during a violent storm of thunder and lightning on Thursday the 18th, May 18th, 1749, by one John Mitchell as he was traveling on the road. He was met by a man of a gigantic stature. His face shone like the sun. On his head was something resembling a crown with stars, with the wings on his shoulders. His body seemed of transparent fire, but suddenly it disappeared like several balls of light. Here we seem to have a report of what can only be described as a classic angel, complete with the wings and larger than human stature. The crown could be interpreted as being the same as the halo describes adorning the heads of the heavenly host. So this is more of like a classic angel, I guess, which is why, I don't know, I don't really believe it. The highway humanoid was a strange humanoid cryptid that was caught on film on a highway in England. The video was filmed sometime in 2007. So yeah, this one is just a video of a highway with a humanoid on it. It could be fake, or it could be an animal or something. Or hey, it could be a real scary cryptid. I guess we'll never know, but there isn't really much to say about this one. The Amarillo Zoo had cameras that caught the zoo's famous chupacabra type humanoid, showing this picture. That's about it. By the way, UAO stands for Unidentified Amarillo Object. Bro, does Amarillo get enough unidentified objects where they need their own, like, little freaking acronym for it? Like, bro. On the 20th of October... Dude, crap. I'm so tired. On the 20th of August 1970, two boys in the Bukit Berdeham, Pulau Penang, Malaysia went to the spot where they had been told the UFO landed the day before. They encountered a round blue object on the ground, and several humanoids stood around the object. These humanoids were described as ugly and were only 3 inches tall. Bro, like, I'm just trying to imagine that. Hold on. 3 inches, bro. I'm sorry to say this, everybody watching, but 3 inches is not a lot. These were some short fellows. Anyways, one of the boys attempted to grab one of the humans, and the small being took out something resembling a gun and shot him on the hand. The boys ran to get their teachers, but the spaceship and the humanoids were gone by the time they'd returned. Later that same day, one of the young witnesses who was involved in the first encounters saw a small UFO on the ground near the school. 5 of the 3-inch tall humanoids emerged from this craft, and one of them, who appeared to be the leader of the group, was clad in a yellow uniform and had 2 horn-like protrusions on his head. The other 4 humanoids wore blue uniforms, and the leader pointed a weapon at the witness and shot at him, leaving the young boy to black out. When the witness regained consciousness after being found lying in the bushes a while later, a small red mark had appeared on his leg where he was shot by the vertically challenged visitor. I'm reading from the wiki, bro. This person actually said by the vertically challenged visitor. That's hilarious. That's a great insult, bro. I gotta remember that one. No, you're not short. You're just vertically challenged. I get it. Anyways, the town of Bukit Berdeham was now seemingly in the midst of a UFO flap, as 2 other boys in the same village went out to look for the small UFO and saw 2 tiny men perched among some bushes. One of them was on a rock and the other was on a tree branch. This time, both of the creatures were in yellow suits, but one of them apparently only had one arm and appeared to be holding a small gun. The boys tried to catch the beings, but they managed to escape. Later that evening, the young son of a high-ranking local police official was coming back from school when he saw 2 small figures hiding in the bushes. Like all the other witnesses, he tried to capture the beings but was shot in the hand, receiving a small cut. It's interesting to note that it seems only the children saw these beings, which draws some potential connections between that case and the case of the so-called phantom clowns, even though the lack of adult witnesses is the only thing the 2 share, which is, I mean, the phantom clowns is a whole other thing. I don't think it's in this iceberg, but it's awesome. But it's also cool to notice that fairy entities that are only visible to children were popularized by Goethe's poem Erkonig. Wait, can I say that? In which the titular Slenderman-like assailant kidnaps a child, which honestly might be a lot of where Slenderman comes from, low-key, bruh. Ooh, this one is great. This is my favorite type of cryptid humanoid stuff. The Wyoming woman in black is a disturbing specter rumored to haunt the Wyoming cemetery near Melrose, Massachusetts. So yeah, this one isn't actually in Wyoming, it's in Massachusetts. So it's kind of... John Whalen gave his story courtesy of masscrossroads.com, and this is the story. Here is the story. My friends and I, 4 of us in total, had just finished watching an under the lights fast pitch softball game at Pine Banks Park. Pine Banks Park borders the cemetery. There was never any question that we would cut through the cemetery after the game. We entered the Grove Street gate and our walk through was uneventful, full of talk of the game, tomorrow's bike ride, etc. However, as we approached the Lebanon Street gate, we saw a light glowing red near some gravestones along the wall which surrounds the entire cemetery. We all stopped about 50 yards short of the Lebanon Street gate to check out this light. We could see it flicker, and after a few hair-raising moments, we decided it was a candle in a glass enclosure. We'd been seeing them lately during the day. This was a fairly new thing to be seen on graves, but we had much to our relief figured it out. However, just as we were about to start on our way again, we all saw a figure coming toward us from the direction of the light. It appeared to be of a woman. She was small, and she was covered from head to toe in a long black veiled dress. Needless to say, we were dumbstruck. It was late at night, this woman was alone and in a cemetery. We thought she must be a widow or something, so out of respect, we remained silent. As she passed, she seemed to almost float by. She was totally covered in black mourning drape, so we couldn't see her face. And then in parentheses it says, years later I saw a picture of Civil War windows, graveside, and they were dressed exactly the same. She continued out of the gate and then proceeded up Lebanon Street toward the old Ripley Elementary School. Bro, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of a pussy. So I'm low-key looking around my room right now, because it's like late at night when I'm recording this. I'm kind of getting spooked, bro. No, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, we all ran out of the gate and crossed the street. We ran on the opposite side of the street, passing her and continuing on to my old house, which overlooked the cemetery. As she passed by, one of my friends whispered, "She's not touching the ground." Oof, oof. We let out a gasp as she passed by us no more than 20 feet, and we could clearly see that she was not walking on the ground. It was a moonlit night, and we could see her very clearly. She continued past my house, and she entered the Ripley schoolyard, which abutted the cemetery. She walked through the yard and re-entered the cemetery by means of an old path which ran from the cemetery to the schoolyard. We were all looking at each other and we were speechless. She continued on until we lost sight of her in the tree cover. My friends went home and I went inside. I can tell you, we were spooked. And so was I, bro. Oh my god. According to a South American journal, first published in 1976, a couple of unfortunate souls had a terrifying run-in with two bizarre winged creatures while strolling along a moonlit forest trail in southern Brazil, somewhere close to the coastal city of Pelotas. At first, they took the large silhouettes to be not more than oversized birds, but as the creatures landed in front of them, it soon became obvious that they were, in fact, something far stranger than the witnesses could have ever anticipated. This apparently took place sometime in the 1950s, and Lucy Gerlach Real and her husband Luis de Rosario Real were the reluctant witnesses in question. The strange silhouettes were swooping around over the forest trail just ahead of them, and as they looked up into the beautiful nighttime sky, they could have sworn that the shapes represented two large birds gracefully soaring through the clouds above the forest canopy. However, the sense that these avian enigmas were anything graceful quickly evaporated when the entities came down to land in front of the couple. They quickly noticed the creatures in question were actually much taller than any bird, and that their bodies looked uncannily humanoid. While the bewildered witnesses stood there, presumably utterly dumbstruck at the scene unfolding before their eyes, the creatures seemed to crouch down as if they were trying to avoid being seen. A decidedly uneasy feeling soon spidered its way over the Real couple, and they both got the chilling sense that they were now being somehow stalked by the winged humanoids here. Following their instincts, they quickly decided to flee the scene, but Luis would later confess to regretting the fact he didn't stay to find out about the true nature of these anomalies. It's pretty cool. I mean, Luis sounds like a cool guy, bro. She says she got better respect. So that tablet, let my credit to this. It's Amazon in my teeth, I call it dick. I got through the rocks every time my mom, you know, I went to Billy. The headless angel of Portugal was a mysterious humanoid being sighted by 4 young shepherdesses near Cabeco, Portugal, in the summer of 1950. The entity was described as a figure like a statue made of snow, which the rays of the sun had turned somewhat transparent, which is a awesome and beautiful description, by the way. The entity reportedly had bright white skin, a distinct lack of a head, but somehow managed to hover in the air with no discernible wings. Okay, so this next one about the woman who walks the road of bones, I got all this information from SiberianTimes.com. A mysterious woman, believed by some to be named Ludmila and possibly originating from Kazakhstan, has been observed for months walking the desolate road of bones towards Magadan in Russia's far east, even during the harsh winter months. This road, with a dark history of being constructed by Gulag prisoners, many of whom perished in the process, is among the world's loneliest roads. Despite offers for assistance or lifts, she consistently refuses and remains solitary, avoiding contact with anyone she encounters or comes close to encounter. Residents of the village of Kandiga reported seeing her in January, noting her intention to reach Kamchatka, a peninsula on Russia's eastern coast. While the police haven't intervened as she hasn't committed any crimes, a lot of people online think that she needs help from the police, but I'm not one of those people. I mean, bro, if you want to walk a road for months alone without any help and you've been offered help, bro, that's do you, bro. Okay, for this next one about the Philadelphia Eagle Birdman, I got all my information from itsomething.fandom.com. It's spelled itsmth.fandom.com. Philadelphia Eagle Birdman is a haunting male cryptic bird that has been known to inhabit the states of New York and Pennsylvania. Birdman was last seen menacing the streets of North Philadelphia with his feline friend Tweak. His wings do not help enough to fly, so he enjoys riding bikes down steep hills with no brakes to avoid being spotted. This is so funny to me that this cryptid is literally named a eagle birdman, but bro can't fly. Anyways, its appearance is sort of like a huge chicken and is known for being an expert in sneaking around humans. He prefers to drink malt liquor and consume peanut butter sandwiches as much as possible. And then the wiki writer did say that they suspect that this exotic animal is a fan of marijuana, as we have seen its trail of smoke into essence after sighting the Birdman, which is kind of funny. During a hockey game in 2009, he was spotted at the Blade Runners in Harmarville, Pennsylvania, while blocking a puck with his ear. He instantly skated off the ice, and many people questioned how he was able to make it on the ice in the first place. This started an investigation on the 911 Commission report and a Homeland Security audit. Oh, my cat just walked in. What's up, Blue? Okay, we just finished layer 6. We're about to get into layer 7, but before we do, I have the daily question of the day for you guys. Well, I guess bi-weekly because I don't upload that much. But okay, this question of the day is, are you a cat person or a dog person or some other weird animal? Let me know in the comments, guys. All right, now let's get into layer 7. Okay, for this next one about the indescribable lurker of Lantarnam, I got all my information from paranormalworld.fandom.com. Lanternam is a electoral district located in the southeast region of Wales, specifically within the administrative division called Torfaen. And in simpler terms, an electoral district or electoral ward is akin to a voting district or a subdivision of like a local authority area used for electoral purposes. In the context of the UK, wards are used to choose representatives for local councils or boroughs. So when the narrative mentions that Lanternam was home to Edward Frank before 1813, it indicates that he resided in this specific district during that time frame. The tale from Lanternam, as told by Reverend Edmund Jones, recounts a harrowing night experienced by a young man named Edward Frank. As Frank walked home one late evening, he encountered an eerie noise followed by a sight of a tall, dismal entity. Despite his terror, he bravely confronted the figure, demanding its departure in God's name. To his relief, it vanished, but his ordeal didn't end there. Soon enough, he felt disoriented and panicked, further intensified by the appearance of two dun-colored post-like objects. In his terror and confusion, he sought refuge by leaning against a cow in a nearby field for comfort. Eventually, drawn to a familiar house, he knocked and was taken in by a woman he recognized. Within that house, another guest, Abraham Llewellyn, overheard Frank's tale and later relayed it to Reverend Jones, who then included it in his collection of Welsh ghost stories. So this one seems kind of realistic. I don't know. I think ghosts are real, at least in the demonic context, especially since the ghost disappeared when he told it, you know, in God's name, blah, blah, blah. Throughout history, there appear to be relatively consistent reports of humanoid entities that seem to be swathed in flames without any suffering or anything. A writer on the Paranormal World fandom site refers to these creatures as Burning Men, highlighting notable cases such as the Felix Stowe fire demon of 1965 and the Raleigh-Bach Burning Man of 1125. So we got some diversity here. This writer on the Paranormal World fandom presents an unfortunately undated account found on a list of flying humanoid encounters, depicting a bizarre being resembling the comic hero known as the Human Torch, like from the Marvel Fantastic Four. Though the exact date remains frustratingly vague, with the source only specifying this event occurred during the medieval period, it is recounted that a potentially supernatural siege took place in the Black Forest. The writer on the Paranormal World fandom site, through their own research, identified that the Black Forest is located in the German state of Baden-Württemberg. According to the account, a flying flaming humanoid soared through the village before finally settling atop a church steeple. The terrified villagers, likely perceiving the figure as a demonic apparition, gathered around the church, pelting the fiery being with rocks, and then after an unspecified yet presumably lengthy period, the airborne entity finally departed, disappearing from sight and never returning. Oh bro, I don't usually record in the morning. I got like my my black coffee here, and I think it's like drying my throat out. This is not good for my voice, bro. I might have to take a break and record later if it keeps doing this, bro. I guess we'll see. But the morning is like the only time I ever have time to, record, because I go to school, and then I go to the gym, and then I have friends, so I hang out with my friends, and then I come home, and then it's like already like 8 p.m. So then I gotta get in bed because, you know, I wake up early to record videos, and then I can't wake up without my morning coffee, you know. Maybe I should just like get rid of all my friends, just no more friends. Who needs friends when you have a YouTube channel with 8,000 subscribers? Anyways, that's not important. Let's get back into these Burning Man. Upon learning that the Black Forest was situated in Germany, the writer drew parallels between this incident and the previously mentioned Raleigh-Bach Burning Man. Albert Rosales, renowned for his expertise on anomalous humanoids, proposed the idea that this being could have been a traditional alien humanoid adorned in luminescent attire. However, the writer from the Paranormal World fandom site challenges this perspective. Given the recurring nature of reports on such fiery entities, they argue that these beings are more likely to be elemental or some other kind of like not alien, you know, which makes sense, I guess. But or they're all demons, bro. I don't know. I mean, personally, I think they're all demons, bro. Low-key, at least all the ones that are like actually like provable and like believable, I think that they're all just, which is why you need Jesus Christ in your life. But let's get into the next entry here. The Men in Black are a nightmarish bunch, stalking UFO witnesses and sending threatening phone calls galore. They can make your life hell if they so chose. But would you ever expect to run into one of them on a tropical island holiday? No? Well, I can imagine that's the same sort of security that Neville and Barbara Jack were lulled into by the peace and pleasure of Fuerteventura, Costa Caleta. But of course, that sense of security would soon be shattered by a surreal run-in with an entity that I seriously doubt the Jacks couple could have ever imagined. In northeast England's Cleveland County, Neville Jack, a social worker, and his wife decided to vacation in the Canary Islands in late 2012. Landing in Costa Caleta, the couple enjoyed a leisurely stroll on a high promenade overlooking the sea. Around 4 p.m., amid the picturesque setting, they noticed a peculiar man about 100 meters away. Standing at 6'2", his appearance was uncanny. A black hat, dark 60s sunglasses, sunblock-like pale skin, a draped jumper, and unusually long fingers. As he neared, they saw his almost translucent skin and peculiar sunglasses that covered a vast area around his eyes. Like they were like big sunglasses, you know? His angular face looked aged, and his attire seemed oddly out of place. As he passed, he uttered an indecipherable phrase in an eerie tone, both high and low-pitched. It's kind of weird. The encounter left Neville unsettled. He felt observed from the moment that they spotted them. Back at their hotel, the encounter consumed Neville's thoughts, especially as he felt the man wasn't from here, quote unquote. The strangeness intensified when Neville later identified a striking resemblance between this man and an artist depiction of the mysterious Men in Black discussed by Nick Redfern on Coast to Coast AM. He reached out to Redfern, sharing their encounter, which is how we have it today. This one's cool, but this one's like, this one seems like it could like happen to me, you know? This one seems more like realistic. Yeah. Okay, so the Pamir Snowman links to a website called PamirTimes.net, and it looks like just a poem, so I'm just gonna read the poem. I don't really know what extra significance this has. Like, I've seen your comments, guys. I promise I tried to research this one and see what was going on, but I couldn't find anything else. Hey, Mr. Snow, look at yourself. You are melting. LOL. Darling, don't act like you don't know what is happening to you. Why the climate is getting warm day by day? Well, people have been using wood to stay warm, and that's one major cause which increases the temperature, I think. But for sure, the humankind, which are not so kind, by the way, must have lame justifications in this regard. Why don't they find any alternative wood? Well, darling, it's all about priorities. You know, these humankind are out of the circle of humanity. They have become monetarists, opportunists, starving for luxuries and battling for worldly pleasures. Believe me, these scavenger type can go to any extent to get what they want. Oh, Mr. Snow, it's sickening. I am worried about other friends. Darling, everything is depleting fast, and these so-called human beings are not even worried about. But one thing is for sure, nature always takes its course. And this was written by DJ Photography. Dude. Okay, this story about the 8 to 9 foot tall, whistling, disfigured humanoid is paraphrased from a story on phantomsandmonsters.com. You know, just citing my sources here. In the dense forests of western Pennsylvania on the Montour Trail, a group of friends embarked on a camping adventure. Among them was a seasoned camper skilled in the ways of the wilderness. As night descended and temperatures dropped, while most of the group was preoccupied with merrymaking, spiked with drinks and smokes, the onus of camp responsibilities fell heavily upon him. The night was filled with warmth from a crackling fire, their odd culinary combinations of ramen noodles with cheese, burgers, and the constant need for more firewood. I bet that snowman would be very happy. As bouts of rain mingled with music and laughter, the seasoned camper ventured deeper into the woods each time in search of wood. On one of these times he went out, as the early hours approached and snowflakes began their dance, a haunting whistling sound, eerily reminiscent of an inhale through a snorkel, if you can imagine that, whispered from the shadows. Shaking off his unease, attributing it to the whims of the wind, he headed back. However, when the strange whistling grew louder and more distinct in his trip, his heart raced. Another inexplicable sound, loud and unsettling, stopped him in its tracks. Alone with just his flashlight, he couldn't find the origin of the sound. Back at the camp, they huddled against the biting cold, sharing tales, trying to forget the mysterious sounds lurking at the edge of their consciousness. Little did they know they were on the cusp of a night riddled with unsettling events. By 4:30 a.m., weary but resolute, our seasoned camper decided on one last wood gathering trip. His friends, perhaps spurred by the cold or camaraderie, split up to help. Soon he found himself in a more remote part of the forest, the eerie whistle now playing his haunting tune again. A familiar voice, seeming to be that of a friend, beckoned, but despite frantic searching, the source still remained elusive. Then the whistling intensified, appearing to chase him. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over him as he sought refuge under a tree. As snow blanketed the forest, he heard an uncanny voice echoing phrases they had shared earlier, now mimicking his own voice perfectly. But nothing prepared him for what he saw next. There, mimicking his earlier posture, was a towering, skeletal apparition, its grotesque frame shadowing the snowy backdrop. As it screamed, a sound echoing a jet's roar, it leaped onto a tree and vanished. Rushing back, he found his supposedly beckoning friend snuggled in a tent, asleep. Though others had heard the piercing scream, they dismissed it as an animal's cry. Come dawn, they found disarrayed footprints and tree scratches, hinting at the nocturnal visitor's true presence. Back in the safety of his home, the camper's research on North American tall skinny cryptid brought him face to face with tales of the Wendigo. Haunted by this, he looked more into it and he discovered that he thinks it was a Wendigo that he found. This one's camping is so scary and like fun, but those tales are always like, they get to me, you know? So the Central Kentucky Humanoid is talking about a Reddit post, and the title of the post is EMT friend saw this 2 days ago, turning his ambulance around at the end of a rural road. It was swaying and eyes were glowing without the headlights. Central Kentucky. Accompanying the text is this image. This one's kind of creepy, bro. I'm not gonna lie. This one's a little creepy, bro. Okay, this next one about the Donald Shrum humanoid, I'm getting from journalnews.com.ph, just so you know. In the cool autumn of 1964, Donald Shrum, a 28-year-old bow hunter, ventured into the Cisco Grove Forest in Placer County, California, anticipating nothing more than an ordinary hunting trip. Little did he know this expedition would become the most haunting experience of his life. During an afternoon hunt, Shrum found himself separated from his companions. As darkness approached, he chose the safety of a tree's height to rest for the night. As he settled in, a mysterious white light darted through the forest canopy, its movement too erratic for any known aircraft. Believing it to be a rescue helicopter, Shrum hastily descended and ignited flares, hoping to signal his location. But as the light neared, he realized with a rising dread that it wasn't a helicopter. It was something otherworldly. Fearful, he clambered back to his treetop refuge. His heart raced as 3 figures approached. 2 resembled humans, while the third looked robotic. The nightmare escalated as the figures attempted to shake him from the tree. Shrum vividly remembered a chilling white vapor spewing from the robot, making him lose consciousness. Regaining his senses, he desperately fought back. He lit matches, threw objects, and even shot arrows, once striking the robotic figure, causing sparks to fly. Yet the siege persisted, with a second robot joining the assault, rendering Shrum unconscious with that same eerie vapor. The night's terror seemed endless. At dawn, even more beings arrived, filling the air with a thick and captivating smoke. When Shrum finally awoke, he was barely hanging onto the tree. His alien assailants were gone, though. Another member of his hunting party had also witnessed the bizarre UFO, giving credence to Shrum's encounter. However, the entire event remained a haunting, enigmatic mystery, or enigmatic, I guess would be the word there. Oh, my bad, guys. UFOologists Ruben Uriarte and Noe Torres delved into this puzzling incident. According to them, Shrum witnessed a massive cigar-shaped UFO, from which a smaller ship emerged and landed. Shrum's description of the beings, humanoid figures wearing what appeared to be welding goggles and robots with glowing orange eyes, was particularly unsettling. These robots released a vapor, incapacitating him multiple times. Moreover, audio signals from the UFO seemed to command these beings' actions. Upon his return, Shrum faced skepticism. The Air Force suggested it was all a prank, despite a corroborating statement from Shrum's hunting partner. Hesitant to publicize his experience due to potential career repercussions, Shrum's tale stayed mostly under the radar. However, those two UFOologists from earlier believe this event stands shoulder to shoulder with other renowned UFO encounters, like that of Betty and Barney Hill or Travis Welton, which we've already covered both of those before. Donald Shrum's horroring night at Cisco Grove remains one of the most captivating and mysterious UFO incidents to date. One of the most mysterious things is that it took place in California, but it took place in a forest? I thought all their forests were gone because of all the big fires, but I don't know, maybe I was wrong. Mark, a dairy farm worker in California, led a routine life until an unexpected event one August 9, 2019. During the late shift at around 3:15 a.m., he heard peculiar voices from behind the hay barn. Although the dairy grounds were mostly dark, Mark was responsible for the whole farm, so he went to investigate the voices but found nothing. This odd sequence repeated itself, with Mark hearing the voices but seeing no one again. Deciding to confront the potential intruders, Mark planned to use the feed truck's headlights. As he waited in the truck, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Suddenly, Mark found himself in an unfamiliar room, and within moments, a faceless man wielding a knife lunged at him. Mark dodged the attack and the assailant appeared lifeless. Before he could process the situation, two more beings entered the room. A tall man with a crow-like face and a twisted man in a business suit. The latter had a spinning saw blade in his chest and tried to pull Mark onto it. Bro, this sounds like the FNAF movie, bro. Have y'all seen that yet? Anyways, after a fierce struggle, Mark subdued the twisted-faced man. The crow-faced being departed without a word, and Mark found himself back in the feed truck, inexplicably sweaty, with burning handprints on his wrists. When he reached the dairy, only 5 minutes had passed since setting his 8-minute timer. This unsettling experience led Mark to believe he had faced demonic forces, which again, I highly believe to be probably the case, maybe. And then another similar thing happened in the early 1970s. A respected professor from the University of the Andes in Merida, Venezuela, vanished without a trace after chatting with students and entering his car in the university parking lot. Despite some potential sources, including Venezuelan newspaper El Tiempo and reporter Segundo Peña, the event remains shrouded in mystery, raising questions about more, inexplicable disappearances. One wonders if Mark's story would still be mentioned on peculiar websites had he not defended himself that night. Could such bizarre events be related to the unexplained disappearances of others? Like, did that professor have something similar to happen to him, but he just wasn't able to defend himself like Mark was? It's interesting. All right, this next one about the Blue Man of Bad Axe, I got from AboveTopSecret.com. Folk in the small town of Bad Axe, Michigan had become unsettled when rumors went around about strange doings in the area. People were beginning to hear tales of strange humanoid creature haunting the quiet country backroads. In the space of a few weeks, reports grew in number, the police became involved, and events were headed for an unlikely crescendo before the month was out. It was April of 1958, and the movie theaters had enjoyed a very good year with lots of classics. Horror and science fiction were leading the way, and folk would spend weekend evenings watching aliens coming to Earth with dark intentions, of course, in movies. Plots involved weird-looking blobs and critters taking over the minds of good townsfolk or feasting on unsuspecting travelers. The early reports came from teenagers driving out in the country roads. Looming out of the darkness, a figure would run alongside the car as they gunned the engine and sped away to safety. Later incidents became more detailed, as some people described the creature as, quote, over 10 feet tall. Others said it was, quote, very short and misshapen, but they all agreed that the monster was blue. Descriptions involved it having a huge head, and some said that it glowed in the dark. Some said it even, quote, flashed lights at us. It didn't take long for the police to become interested, and especially after a bus full of Elkton Junior High pupils were terrorized by the creature. The kids were left in tears, and it was clear something had to be done, and urgently. The next day, 6 patrol cars arrived at the school to take descriptions. With all the police interest, 1950s police interest, the creature turned himself in and was duly taken down to the station. The resulting mugshot is a lost gem of UFO history. Like, this is like a real mugshot, bro. This one, the Maria Pretzel humanoid, is another Reddit post. Title reads, tall blonde humanoid wearing a blue outfit, holding a sky blue sphere and emitting light from his fingers and toes, seen by Maria Pretzel, June 14th, 1968. Villa Carlos Paz, Cordoba, Argentina, with this image. All right, this one by the hairy man of Vergas Trail came from Minnesota's newcountry.com. Vergas is a small town in Ottertail County in west central Minnesota. Just over 300 people live in the town that is also home to the world's largest loon, which is actually a 20-foot high sculpture. But Vergas is also home to the minimum maintenance roads of Vergas Trails and the hairy man legend. For the past 6 decades, this urban legend has been floating around the area. The hairy man of Vergas Trail has been described as being 8 feet tall, having long and straggly hair, a musty smell, and always barefoot. He was also often blamed for deaths of animals around the area. Claims of his existence started in the 60s and peaked in the 70s, but then tapered off after the 80s. Some people and families in the area said that it was a legend, while others claimed it was an old hermit who lived in the woods and wasn't keen on kids wandering on his land. The most infamous encounter with the hairy man came from a man named Ken Zitzow. Zitzow returned from driving in the woods one night with dents in his car hood and claimed that it was from the hairy man jumping in front of the vehicle and pounding on the car. Another encounter came from Cheryl Hansen, who claimed to have seen the hairy man as a kid, and here is a quote from Cheryl. "We were snowmobiling around and around this old cabin we found, and all of a sudden a beast-like creature popped out of the cabin holding a huge stick. It had very broad shoulders, and I was trying to rationalize what it was, but what really stood out to me was it was barefoot in the snow." Cheryl says she knows what she saw that day and it wasn't human. There was once a human-like skull discovered on the trail by a private citizen. It was found in the area known as the Klondike or the Old Vergas Trails, where most of the hairy man sightings occurred. They never turned it over to the authorities though, so no one knows if it was man, animal, or some kind of combination. Whoa, layer 7 is done, guys. On to layer 8, the last layer. Almost done, guys, but these last ones are pretty cool. Okay, this next one about Chile's Millennium Humanoids I got from arcanebeastsandcritters.wordpress.com. Hitting their peak in late 1999 through 2000, there were numerous sightings throughout Chile, concentrated the highest around Calama and the northern regions, of a gray ape-like humanoid creature, often described possessing large yellow eyes and 2 leathery wings. Many of the sightings involved the creature attacking or fighting with stray dogs, killing them, and possibly drinking their blood before flying or bounding away from witnesses into the night. Reports of the creature and its behavior and physiology were often compared or conflated with the chupacabra and Mothman, who were also believed to coincide with similarly timed UFO sightings in the area. Corrine lived with her parents and 2 sisters in a small house in La Puente, California in the early 2000s. She shared a room with her 2 sisters, and in the room was a closet with folding doors that could be slid out to open. Usually these doors were closed, but on this faithful night, they were particularly open. And this is a quote, by the way. "One night I woke up. I don't know what time it was, but it must have been late because everyone else was asleep in my house. All in bed, all nestled in for the night. My bed was situated to where it was facing the closet doors. As I glanced over at them, a glowing orange man peeked around the door of the closet and looked right at. He was smiling." She says that this wasn't even a remotely comforting smile and that she was horrified. "His fingers wrapped around the frame of the door first, and then he poked his head out. Now, from what I can remember, he looked kind of like the Joker from the original Batman series, and glowed from within. I was so scared I couldn't even make a sound. Utterly terrified by the bizarre, illuminated apparition before her, she immediately buried her face in the pillow and did not let herself move until the next morning. When she told her parents what had happened, they inevitably concluded that it was just a dream and told her such. However, she says that she knows it wasn't a dream. In that same house, she had witnessed a pair of shoes take a step with no one in them, and had watched her Barbie doll fall over and sit itself back up. I would be dead, bro. I would be... dude, I couldn't handle that, bro. I'd be gone, dude. I'm kind of a pussy dog. A true phantom stranger was seen in the subways of Manhattan, New York on October 1st, 1999. The witness was ascending the escalator at Penn Station and had reached the street level when she noticed standing about 20 feet away what seemed to be a male figure about 6 feet 7 inches tall. He stood near the mouth of the entranceway to the station. His face was light gray, almost white, with thick brows and menacing eyes. He stood in a peculiar way, standing with his back arched, shoulders broad, and his elbows pointing toward his back. And his head was tilted back as if he was looking at the top of the passerbys' heads. It was like he was trying to choose one. The witness caught a glimpse of his face, but she turned away immediately and walked away down the sidewalk without turning back, feeling that if she would turn around for another look, something would happen to her. For an unknown reason, she felt tremendous fear. I mean, I don't think it's an unknown reason, but that's what the wiki says. This one could be just like a tall dude though, you know, like it could just be like the witness says that it's just a guy who's 6'7", who's like really pale. So I mean, it could just be like a tall, creepy dude, like I don't know. I mean, strange posture, yeah, but it could be like mentally ill or just a dude who's standing weird, bro. The title was a Snakes on the Plane reference, if you didn't get that, by the way. This one is about Venezuelans on a plane. Dude, oh my god, I said Venezuelans, oh my god. Venusians. Dude, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Venusians on a plane, not Venezuelans, bro. The witness here was about to go on her duty as a flight attendant, but her job became a lot more complicated when 3 exceedingly odd passengers boarded the plane during a routine stop. And then what happened would convince the witness that these people were anything but human. And here is a concise summary of this story, because this one's kind of long, so I just kind of, summarized it. Between 1985 and 1989, an anonymous flight attendant with 29 years of experience for an unnamed airline flew from Palm Springs, California to Portland, Oregon, with a brief stop in San Francisco. She remained anonymous due to fear of repercussions of telling the story. During the San Francisco stop, 3 unusual passengers boarded: a 30-year-old man with piercing eyes and a unique forehead, an 8-year-old child, and a middle-aged individual. All wore Sears Roebuck work clothing and had no carry-on luggage. The 30-year-old, seated at 23D, asked the flight attendant about the plane's mass and velocity post-takeoff, a question that she found strange. Later, while ordering food, he seemed unfamiliar with common items, needing a list to decide. He communicated all information to his silent companions. Curious, the flight attendant eavesdropped on a conversation he had with another passenger, during which he asked peculiar questions. He repeated the responses back to his friends again. Later, when she inquired about his age, he claimed to have visited other planets. Upon landing in Portland, the man approached the flight attendant, revealing he knew she'd sat next to someone she disliked, suggesting psychic abilities. He also told her he was light years old. Post-flight, the odd trio left in a limousine, which was unusual given their attire. The flight attendant and her colleagues found the whole encounter unsettling. And this one's really cool if you want to research it more. This one's really interesting. It goes a lot more in depth in the wiki and stuff, and the iceberg is linked below, and then to that you can find a link to the wiki where it talks about a lot more in depth. Our story about the 3 hooded figures on the roof takes place in the Philippines and follows the story of a teenager named Anton de Vera, who has allegedly come to the conclusion that there are 2 possible ways in which to obtain a third eye with which to perceive paranormal entities. The first is, quote, if this is a gift to you since birth, and the second is obtained, quote, if you could experience a near-to-death situation. The gift of second sight has always been present in his family on his mother's side, but Anton also had a near-death experience when he was 2 years old. He accidentally stabbed his left eye on the antenna of a television set in 1989. Oh my god, is that a Taylor Swift reference, guys? And the ensuing trauma has apparently allowed him to have paranormal experiences since he was a small kid. Anton and his family used to live in a house in Marikina City in the Philippines. There were 2 sets of bunk beds in the room where Anton would sleep, one being for his sisters and the other being for his brother and him. There are 6 siblings in the family with 4 girls and 2 boys. The bunk bed shared by his brother and him was located up against the wall with a window, and that window was near enough to the top bunk that the person sleeping on top could open a window to ventilate themselves. When the window was open, you would be able to see the backyards of their house and that of their neighbors, separated by a kamias tree. When he was about 3 or 4 years old, Anton was required to sleep on the top bunk with his brother. Anton was lying beside the wall with the window, while his brother was on the other side. Sometime during the night, he accidentally opened the window and so woke up and tried to close it. However, while he was doing this, he caught sight of these 3 men standing on the roof of our neighbor. The terrible trio were clad in long black clothing and were stretching their arms sideways in a cross-like position. They appeared to be staring at Anton, and when he saw them, he quickly closed the window and put his pillow over the window so that he didn't accidentally open it again. After the incident, he suffered from a nondescript illness. Interestingly, there are figures mentioned in the mythology of the Philippines which fit this description pretty well. They are called the kumakatak, and are described as 3 robed figures, 2 male, 1 female, that knock on the doors of their victims during the middle of the night to bring bad omens, usually foretelling death by visiting the eldest member of a household or one who is sick and will soon die. Visits from the kumakatak are obviously more frequent after an outbreak of disease. While their door-knocking behavior is not an exact match to the entities in Anton's account, their appearance and prophetic nature seem to fit the folklore pretty well. That's pretty cool. The headless humanoid is another Reddit one, and I'm just going to read directly from the thread accompanying the image. 4 men, Marcelo Martin Sanchez, Fausto Dominguez Martin, and Julian Sinden Martin, were returning back to their village, carrying contraband foodstuffs, and had stopped for a brief rest on an isolated field. Suddenly, the men began to hear what appeared to be the sounds of hundreds of voices chanting or murmuring together at the same time. They could also hear the sound of hands clapping. It soon became a cacophony of unintelligible sounds. The men looked around and spotted a tremendously tall figure approaching their location on a nearby field. The bizarre figure seemed to swing his arms like a soldier. Even stranger, the bizarre figure was wearing a white shirt with a black stripe around the neck area and appeared to be headless. The 3 stunned men watched as the headless giant walked by only about 5 meters away from them, totally ignoring them. It disappeared quickly into the distance, taking great strides as it did. Strangely, the loud cacophony of sound seemed to originate from it. The men did not go out anymore on those night runs after this incident. What I'm about to read is translated directly from Italian, and I found it on recfiles.com, recfiles.com. Polcanto, a well-known Mugello town in the municipality of Borgo San Lorenzo, was the scene of the case in 1984, the case being the Ferry case, which involved Mr. Isidoro Ferry and his dog. Exactly 3 kilometers from the town in Via Tasea, Mr. Ferry, his wife, daughter, and son lived in Villa La Radicchia, where the man was a caretaker. During the night between 9th and 10th of October, around 3 a.m., a very powerful light hit the window of the room where Ferry slept. Since the man never closed the shutters and the window had no shutters or curtains, the violent beam of a light woke him up. His son also slept in the same room, whose sleep was not interrupted, while his wife was in another room caring for their daughter, who was ill in those days. Without getting out of bed, Ferry looked out and saw on the top of a small hill beyond Via Tasea, therefore about 40 meters away, a human-shaped silhouette, erect, rather imposing, from whose head or helmet the strong light beam. After a few moments, that presence disappeared, and in its place appeared a strange source of light that was not perfectly defined. Pink in color and made up of 3 luminous jets aimed at the ground, which seemed to originate from a dark horizontal line. However, nothing could be observed due to the branches of the trees. After a couple of minutes, that phenomenon also suddenly vanished, and in its place, a diffused, very white and dazzling light began to advance towards the villa, illuminating the road, the trees, and the park as if it were daytime. When the facade of the building was also flooded with light, the man, now frightened, started to move closer to the window, perhaps to at least close the shutters, but about a half a meter from the opening, he felt paralyzed, unable to move or make any noise. Immediately after the light retreated towards the area from which it had emerged, Ferry was able to regain control of his movements and approach the window. Once the light vanished, a glowing red sphere appeared in the same point, about 2 or 3 meters in size, whose brightness remained confined within it without illuminating any surrounding environment. Precisely the observation of the sphere caused the caretaker of the villa a marked discomfort in his eyes, so much he could not stare at it for long. After a few moments, however, the object rose and began to evolve in a southwest direction, climbing the hill and disappearing from view beyond the ridge. The dog never barked during the event, but following the alleged close encounter, he became seriously ill. He began to refuse food and soon died. Mr. Ferry reported a sensation of strange silence during the total 5 minutes of the phenomenon. The police, who intervened after the report, found 3 circular depressions about 10 centimeters in diameter and 3 deep, arranged in a triangle in a meadow just above the sighting area. I don't know what that means, actually. This is like directly translated from Italian. I think it means that they were like arranged in a triangle, like the 3 depressions. Anyways. However, no trace of radioactivity was detected. Interestingly, other witnesses noticed a red light in the sky that night. The Cypress Orange Man is another Reddit one, so I'm gonna read straight from the little red thing. Date, September 1968. Location, Decalia Barracks, Cyprus. Summary: the witness was a British NCO stationed at the Decalia Army Barracks. Dude, oh my gosh. The witness was a British NCO stationed at the Decalia Army Barracks. At 3 a.m. one morning, he was alerted to the presence of an intruder when his wolfhound sat up and began growling. Fearing terrorists had infiltrated the base, the soldier crept towards the door of his room. An eerie, high-pitched humming sound started up outside, and the wolfhound promptly hid under the bed. The soldier stepped into the landing outside his room and was confronted by an unearthly apparition. Floating up the stairs towards him were the disembodied head and shoulders of a humanoid being. That being had a glowing orange face and scarlet hair and was wearing a light blue jumpsuit. It glared at the NCO with prominent unblinking eyes. As it approached the landing, it swiveled its head at a full 180 degrees. The witness hastily backed into his room and slammed the door. The humming sound intensified to a deafening pitch. It was accompanied by a sliding noise as though the entity was dragging itself across the landing. The soldier grabbed the only weapon at hand, an underwater spear gun, and fired it straight through the door. The sounds abruptly ceased, but the NCO was too terrified to venture outside again. A patrolling guard discovered him an hour later, still sitting on the edge of his bed, paralyzed by fear. Although the witness soon recovered from his ordeal, the wolfhound was a nervous wreck. For the rest of his life, it remained terrified of the slightest sound. It's kind of sad, bro. Poor little dog. Uncanny Valley Predator is another Reddit post. The Uncanny Valley is where we are scared by things that look almost human but aren't. Other animals do not experience the Uncanny Valley effect and will accept things that look like them with little issue. That means that at some point in our evolution, running away from things that looked almost human was advantageous enough to be imprinted on our genetics. What the hell were we scared of? It's pretty interesting to think about. Okay, this final one is interesting. It's another Reddit post, and this one was definitely made by someone after a long night of ether and ketamine. A man reported seeing a Bigfoot-like figure on 3 glowing or metallic red balls hovering over the freeway about 75 yards in the air. The witness slowed his vehicle to about 10 miles an hour to get a better view when the figure began to fly north across a wheat field. He could only see the back of the creature, and it was solid black with what appeared to be a suit or hairy cloak sitting on what appeared to be 3 spheres connected together. These large round ball-shaped objects had a candy apple metallic glow to them. Shocked, he pulled over. He could see what appeared to be a dead dog, possibly a black and white Sheltie, hanging from the left side of this vehicle on a rope. The figure then flew across the field towards Smith Road. The witness jumped in his car and sped northeast to Sapoli Road, where he turned and proceeded to speed at around 70 miles an hour towards Smith Road. He got there and turned left, cutting the figure off so we could see it better. At this point, it realized the witness was following it and turned and flew more westerly from where it came. He could not get in a position to see it again after that, and this is a quote from someone named AR. Alright guys, that was the Humanoid Encounters Iceberg. This one was so fun to make. This is probably my favorite video I've ever made, bro. It's like so long and it's so like actually interesting. If you guys liked it, please subscribe, join my Discord, follow my Instagram, leave a like, leave a comment, all that, you know, it helps me out. I don't care. It helps me out. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed. Everybody please have a great night. Sweet dreams.